Chapter 459. When Xunyu saw the situation, there was a flash of gloating in her eyes. She really wished that she could marry Shen Miao to the Qin country, and it would be best to marry an old man as a concubine, and torture her to death in a foreign country. That Princess Mingyan did not think that Shen Xian would reject her without giving her any face, and there was a look of displeasure on her face. Because when she answered, Shen Xian's matter had already passed, and Huang Fuhao did not have any reason to continue, and was too lazy to speak. He sat at the side leisurely drinking his wine, and coldly looked at Princess Mingyan, making things difficult for the Shen family. Princess Mingyan said, "One cannot say it like that. Everyone knows that the young lady of the Shen family's army has both ability and integrity. Why does young lady Shen look down on Bengong, and is not willing to greet Bengong?" With such a rude hat being put on, Shen Miao could not cover it up even if she wanted to. She simply stood up and bowed to Princess Mingyan. "This official's daughter greets your Princess Highness." She suddenly stood up, and everyone's eyes in the hall landed on Shen Miao. 2 years' time was enough to change a lot of things, including the impression of an idiot female that was deeply engraved in people's hearts. Because it was too far away, it gradually faded. When the young female in front stood up, she was like a different person from the memory. The light purple dress made her skin even more translucent like jade. After staying in a place like the Shaochun city for 2 years, the sandstorms did not even grind her down a bit. But instead the noble air around her became more obvious. Her facial features were as delicate as a painting, which made one's heart feel comfortable, but there was a faint majesty in her gestures. Gentleness and firmness were strangely blended on her, and there was a kind of grace and dignity. Even the Empress by the Emperor's side did not seem to have such a natural bearing. Princess Mingyan's brows wrinkled. She did not expect that Shen Miao would have such good looks and bearing, and she had long known of Shen Miao's name as an idiot. Bringing Shen Miao out was nothing more than to embarrass the Shen family, and did not think that at this moment it would be lifting a rock to smash one's own feet. But the reason why Princess Mingyan was Princess Mingyan was that she had some capital to be arrogant. She immediately raised her eyebrows and looked at Shen Miao up and down, as if she was sizing up goods, and said, "Young lady Shen has the countenance of a flower in the moon, and is indeed an outstanding beauty. No wonder General Shen wanted to hide young lady like a pearl in his palm. With such good looks, I wonder which family will be fortunate enough to marry young miss into their mansion in the future?" These words were a little overboard, and Shen Xian immediately glared at him. Although he had to take into consideration the other party's identity, he could not tolerate his own daughter being spoken to like this in public. Just as she was about to speak, that Princess Mingyan diverted the topic. "One think that young lady Shen is also talented?" As soon as these words came out, the expressions of everyone in the hall became very interesting. Yi Peilan and the rest were trying their best to hold back their laughter. What talent did Shen Miao have? That was something everyone was well aware of. In these 2 years, he went to the Shaochun city again. The Shaochun city was a borderland with many martial artists, and one feared that they were even more vulgar. Shen Miao's eyes slightly drooped. This official's daughter's talent is shallow. The princess is overpraising. "Miss Shen, you don't have to be modest." Princess Mingyan smiled innocently. Speaking of which, when Bengong was still in the Qin country, one had heard that a few years ago young lady Shen obtained first rank in the Mingqi's academy examinations. When Bengong heard it, one was extremely moved. Now seeing young lady Shen again, one recalled this old matter. Shen Miao lowered her head and did not speak. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu, however, were anxious in their hearts. At this moment, if one still could not see that Princess Mingyan was deliberately finding fault and deliberately targeting Shen Miao, then one would be blind. With that said, everyone recalled the Chrysanthemum Banquet's academy examinations, where Shen Miao and Kai Lin competed in archery, and the 3 arrows made Kai Lin speechless, and he ended up in a sorry state. It was also at that time that Shen Miao, who was completely different from the past, appeared in front of everyone for the first time. Chapter 460. Coincidentally, Kai Darren and Kai Lin were present at the tribute banquet, and Kai Lin's face immediately turned red. Now that Kai Lin was 2 years older, he had matured a lot as compared to the domineering one. That little grudge with Shen Miao had long been thrown to the back of one's mind with time, and because he was no longer infatuated with Shen Yu, It could be said that the grudge was resolved with a smile, but one did not expect that the old matter would be brought up in front of so many people, making him extremely embarrassed. It was not only Kai Lin who was thinking about the old matter. In the corner of the tribute banquet, the Marquis of Linen Xie Ding and his 2 sons were sitting. The current Marquis of Linen was getting older, and no longer had the high and vigorous spirit of the past. Even in such an occasion, he only wanted to find a quiet corner. When the matter of the academy examinations was suddenly mentioned, he remembered that Xie Jingxing was also there, and unexpectedly went up to the stage and defeated Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao. At that time when he returned to the residence, he angrily reprimanded Xie Jingxing, but in his heart, he was proud of Xie Jingxing thinking of the old matters. It was even more difficult to bear. Xie Ding revealed a dejected expression, but it was seen by Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao, who were beside him, and a trace of darkness flashed in their eyes. Princess Mingyan continued to speak. Today Bengong also have the interest to compete with young lady Shun. Why not compete in archery? Just treat it as a game. These words were said abruptly and strangely. Emperor Wenhui was the first to laugh. Young lady Shun is a delicate young lady. How could she know such a thing like archery? Your Majesty does not know. Princess Mingyan smiled. At that time young lady Shun's grace was something that even the great Qin had heard of. It is said that a tiger father does not have a dog daughter. General Shun is so valiant. So young lady Shun must be an extraordinary female. Moreover, young lady Shun is a delicate female. So is Bengong not a female? Or is it that your Majesty feels that my great Qin is not worthy to be on par with the Ming Qi? Princess Mingyan looked delicate and beautiful, but her words were very vicious. In one sentence she brought out the entire Ming Qi. If one did not compete, it meant that the Ming Qi did not look at the great Qin. At this time, how could Emperor Wenhui let the great Qin and the Ming Qi have a rift? He immediately looked at Shun Miao and said in a seemingly gentle manner, "What does young lady Shun think?" Shen Xian clenched his fists as he really wanted to help Shun Miao reject this rude request. But if one were to reject it, it would only give Princess Mingyan more justifiable leverage. It was Shun Miao who glanced at Princess Mingyan and lowered her head. This official's daughter dare not disobey the princess instructions. Did not dare to disobey. At the end it was still expressing one's unwillingness, as if Princess Mingyan was bullying others. Princess Mingyan also heard the meaning in Shun Miao's words and her face sank. She then thought of something and giggled. She said, "I heard that during the academy examinations, young lady Shun and that opponent used the method of betting their lives to compete. Today we will also use the method of betting our lives to compete, alright?" No. Shen Xian did not wait for Shun Miao to finish and flatly refused. His face was cold and he did not care about Emperor Wenhui's expression as he looked at Princess Mingyan and said word by word, "Since your Princess Highness said it is a game, then just treat it as a game. Why must one implicate one's life? Moreover, the tribute banquet is a joyous occasion. It is better not to see swords and sabers at the banquet." When Luo Shuiyan saw Shen Xian speaking, she could not help but grip the teacup in front of her tightly. At that time they did not know about the matter of Shun Miao betting her life with Kai Lin during the academy examinations, and when they returned to the capital to know about it, their hearts palpitated endlessly. If they were present, they would definitely not let Shen Miao use her life as a gambling stake. Now that this Princess Mingyan from the Qin country obviously had ill intentions, how would she let Shen Miao take the risk? Who knew that when Shen Xian said this, Huang Fu Hao unexpectedly opened his mouth and smiled. Even so, one must treat the game seriously, and that would show the seriousness of the great Qin towards the Ming Qi. General Shun, it is only to let young lady Shun and my younger sister play a game. Could it be that General Shun is afraid? Or is it that the Ming Qi cannot afford to lose? His words were filled with thorns as he looked at Emperor Wenhui. If the Ming Qi is afraid of losing face, then there is no harm in dampening Ming An's mood. Chapter 461. Since it had already risen to the face of the country, if Emperor Wenhui did not make a sound, then he would be humiliated by the great Qin in front of the ministers. In the future, how would he be able to establish his prestige? He did not even look at Shen Xian and directly said to Shun Miao, "Since Princess Mingyan is interested, Shun Miao, accompany Princess Mingyan to play." With the emperor's golden mouth and jade words, It was useless for Shan Exine to say anything else. Shen Qiu clenched his fists and Luo Tan and Feng and Ning looked at each other uneasily. Shen Miao whispered yes. Her expression was not flustered, but it made everyone slightly startled. Princess Ming'an turned her head to look at Shan Miao and coincidentally met Shen Miao's gaze. Shen Miao's pair of eyes were extremely clear, like a child's flawless eyes. Originally, with this kind of eyes, one would be able to see through anything with a glance. But it was this pair of eyes that were looking at Princess Ming'an. The gaze was as calm as a pool of water that had settled for 1,000 years, and was not able to stir up any waves. Thus one could not see any trace of emotion. One was unable to see through it. Princess Ming'an could not help but feel irritated. She smiled and let her maids fetch the bow and arrow. She first smiled and stared at Shan Miao. This is a rule that Bengong often play in the Great Qin. One person would hold the bow and arrow while blindfolded, and designate the other person to place the fruit on their body, and let the other person shoot. She did not let go of Shan Miao's every expression. Does young lady Shen understand? The surrounding people sucked in a breath of cold air. Last time in the academy examinations, Shen Miao and Kai Lin had fruits on their heads, but their eyes were still open. To shoot an arrow while blindfolded. Was not one's life being manipulated by others? Just listening to it made one's hair stand. Shen Exine and Luo Shuiyan were already unable to restrain their anger. Shen Miao smiled gently, as if she was not frightened by Princess Ming'an's words. Many thanks to the princess for informing. She was this calm and did not lose the imposing manner of Ming Qi's side. Immediately more than half of the people present could not help but look up to her. Huang Fuhao stared at her and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Luo Tan pulled the corner of Shen Miao's clothes. Biao, youngest sister, why don't I go on your behalf? I've practiced martial arts before, so I know a thing or two about it. If it really doesn't work, I'll just avoid it. Shen Miao shook her head and looked at Shen Exine and Luo Shuiyan, who still wanted to stop her, and said softly, no need to worry. Since she said it like that, then she has confidence that she would not hit me. If they hit me, they would be in trouble. Huang Fuhao and Ming'an are both smart people and won't do stupid things. They are only doing this to scare me and embarrass me. But sister, Shen Qiu held her shoulders worriedly, you'll be afraid if you're alone. Regardless of whether she can hit you or not, how can she let you go alone? I'm not afraid. Shen Miao replied in a warm voice, moreover, if she hurt me, I also have a chance, so why would I let her off? When she said this, the corners of her lips curled up slightly. It was clearly a smile, but it made people feel a clear chill. Luo Ling patted Shen Miao's shoulder and said softly, be careful. Shen Miao nodded her head and directly walked towards the main hall. She and Princess Ming'an actually walked towards the main hall together, but one would not know if one did not compare. When the two of them walked at the same time, it made others have a strange illusion. Princess Ming'an was a real golden branch in jade leaves, and was brought up by the imperial family. Her appearance was delicate and beautiful, and should be noble and respected, but when she walked beside Shen Miao's hands were crossed and her back was straight. She did not look left or right as she walked and looked straight ahead. Her dignified and graceful bearing actually crushed Princess Ming'an to the point that she was worthless. There were sounds of hissing in the hall. Huang Fuhao's expression also gradually became ugly. Chapter 462. In all fairness, it was not that Princess Ming'an was indescribable, but Shen Miao's magnanimity and composure would make the people around her feel dejected. But thinking about it, it was unimaginable. It was clear that Shen Miao was a young lady of an official, and Princess Ming'an grew up in the palace, so how could she not be compared to Shen Miao? Naturally, they did not know that Shen Miao had been an empress in the inner palace for many years, and she was extremely demanding of herself to be perfect because of Fu Xiuyi, and those rough experiences in the Qin country made her have a bearing that was indifferent to favor or disgrace. In the previous life, if it was not for Mei Foran's secret struggle and Fu Xiuyi's connivance, she could actually be a good empress who was the mother of the world. It was just that this perfect dream was ultimately shattered alive, but it allowed her to have an unconcealable brilliance in this life. Princess Ming'an did not notice everyone's expression, and only looked at Shen Miao with that shiny black longbow in her hands. This bow was most likely made of good wood, and was soaked in special medicinal herbs, making it look extremely hard and cumbersome. Princess Ming'an said to Shen Miao, "This is Bengong's bow. Let's take one arrow each, shall we? Bengong will first shoot you with the arrow, then it will be your turn to pull the bow." The words set the sequence, and the people of Mingqi revealed an indignant look, as Princess Ming'an was obviously bullying others. But Shen Miao only lightly complied, and her expression did not waver. The more she showed that she did not care, the more flustered Princess Ming'an's heart was. She swept a glance at the VIP seating, and suddenly her eyes brightened as she sweetly said, "But now that we are competing here, one fear that some people would feel that it is unfair. It is better to let His Highness Prince Rui of the Great Liang be the judge, and stand here to inspect the bow and arrows, to show that we did not falsify." Finishing, her eyes looked affectionately at Prince Rui. The young ladies of Mingqi who were seated started to scold this Princess Ming'an in their hearts for not knowing shame. This was clearly an opportunity to get close to Prince Rui, and one think that she was intoxicated by Prince Rui's beauty, thus she did such a thing. But Prince Rui had always been unbridled in his actions, and this Princess Ming'an's request was inexplicable, so he would not agree to it. Who knew that when Prince Rui heard it? He pondered for a moment before nodding his head. All right. This was out of everyone's expectations. Even Emperor Wenhui and Huangfu Hao took another look at Prince Rui. One saw Prince Rui lazily standing up from his seat. His legs were long and he took 2 steps to the middle of the hall and stood beside Shen Miao and Princess Ming'an. Princess Ming'an was overjoyed and delicately stretched out her hands to place the bow in Prince Rui's hands and said with a smile, "Then would Your Highness Prince Rui check this bow and see if there is any problem?" On the seats of the princes, Prince Zhou sneered and said in a low voice, "This princess of the Great Qin Empire is really restless. She's making a scene in front of so many people." His tone was full of disdain. "But Miss Shen is unexpected." Prince Jing looked at Shen Miao who was standing shoulder to shoulder with Princess Ming'an. To be so calm, even if it is an act, one's courage and insight is outstanding. Speaking of which, Prince Zhou touched his chin. This young lady of the Shen family is becoming more and more tasteful. He looked at Fu Xiuyi who did not speak a word. "Number 9, do you regret?" Fu Xiuyi lightly said. "Fourth older brother must be joking." Behind Fu Xiuyi, there was a green-clad male who was standing quietly. His gaze went past everyone and landed on the purple-clad young female. Pei Lang looked very calm, as if he was looking at a stranger that he had just met for the first time. It was just that the hands in his sleeves were clenched into fists and were slightly trembling. 2 years had passed and this young female had become more and more attractive. Just like what she said, she was invited back by the heavenly family. But just after returning to the capital, trouble came knocking on her door one after another. The tree longed for peace but the wind would not cease. Shen Miao did not do anything but there were people who took the initiative to look for her. Chapter 463. But Pei Lang knew that Shen Miao would not put herself in a difficult situation, because she had a heart that was more ruthless than everyone else. Prince Rui quickly returned the bow to Princess Ming'an. Princess Ming'an shyly and timidly took it and said to Shen Miao, "May young lady Shen stand over there." Also, she picked up an apple from the maid's tray and handed it to Shen Miao with a smile. "Young lady Shen, place it on your head." Shen Qiu who was seated suddenly clenched her fists. "Yes." Shen Miao's eyes drooped down as she took the apple and walked over to the other side. Everyone looked at her actions, and Princess Ming'an had already ordered people to tie black cloth strips over her eyes. But Prince Rui walked over to Shen Miao's side. Under everyone's eyes, he took the apple from Shen Miao's hands. Shen Miao was startled for a moment as Prince Rui took that apple and gently placed it on her head. Shen Miao looked up at him. Because there was something on her head, Shen Miao was afraid that the apple would fall if she moved too much, thus she could only look at him motionlessly. The young man was extremely tall and even if Shen Miao had grown a few centimeters in these 2 years, she would only reach his chest. She could see the golden buttons on his shirt, and she could also see the meaningful look in his eyes. The silver mask revealed this man's good-looking chin and red lips. The corners of his lips were slightly hooked, making one think if there was such a smiling face under the mask. His black eyes were like the stars in autumn water. When he looked over, it seemed to be gentle but also seemed to be ridiculing. Ridiculing? He placed the apple on Shen Miao's head and bent a finger to rub Shen Miao's hair. as if he was stroking a small beast in captivity. But it was only for a short moment before he took it back. Because he was blocking with his body sideways, when others looked at it from this angle, they would only feel that this Prince Rui of the Great Liang was placing the apple for Shan Miao, and did not have any other actions. He turned and walked to the side, as if he was watching a good show with his arms crossed. Shan Miao's attention was attracted by Princess Mingyan in front of her. Princess Mingyan was slowly pulling the bow. That bow seemed to be very cumbersome, and Princess Mingyan was also pulling it strenuously. The harder she pulled, the more the bow was pulled, and the heavier everyone's heart became. Especially Shen Xian's family. Their faces were as heavy as water. The more the bow was pulled, the greater Princess Mingyan's strength would be, and the greater the strength of the arrow, the more dangerous it would be for Shan Miao. One feared that the residual force of the arrow would bring Shan Miao down. And in this competition, how was it like what Princess Mingyan said? It was only a game, but this was a big matter that concerned the face of a country. Losing was a loss of face, but showing fear was also a loss of face. Shan Miao and Princess Mingyan, everyone was actually optimistic about Princess Mingyan, and only hoped that Shan Miao would not lose too badly. Shan Miao quietly looked at Princess Mingyan, whose eyes were tied with a black cloth. One did not know if Princess Mingyan was deliberately torturing Shan Miao as she pulled the bow slower and slower, and the sound of the bow being pulled tore the hearts of everyone present. Shan Miao's eyes were in a trance, as if she was not at the tribute banquet but in a foreign country, the Qin country. The princes and princesses of the Qin kingdom, as well as the ladies of the officials' families, surround her in the middle as if they are watching a joke. And she was wearing clothes that had been mended countless of times, and there was a fruit on her head as she looked at the person opposite anxiously. That person opposite was arrogant and despotic, dressed in gorgeous and exquisite clothes, and had a white cloth tied over her eyes. She arrogantly said to the crowd of males and females around her, "Look, today let the Empress of Mingqi put an apple on Bengong's head. Later all of you watch clearly for Bengong. See if this Empress of Mingqi, who was born in a military family, would be so scared that she peed in her pants? Ha ha ha, you must see clearly and tell Bengong." She arrogantly pulled the bowstring, and the arrow shot over with a xiao sound. It just happened to miss by a little, but it went from top to bottom, piercing through her hair bun and piercing through her lapel. She screamed in panic and wrapped her clothes tightly, but when she covered it, she heard the ridiculing laughter from all directions getting louder. Such a humiliating memory, but it overlapped with what was in front of her. Shan Miao's lips slowly hooked up, but one did not know if it was out of bitterness or hatred. Her clear eyes seemed to have a layer of black fog that slowly spread to the bottom of her eyes, making it unfathomable. Prince Rui, who was at the side, quietly bent his fingers, paused for a moment, and then quietly released it. She slightly tilted her head in an action that was almost invisible to everyone. Chapter 464. When the arrow shot through the air, everyone present held their breath and focused their attention. There were even some timid females who directly covered their eyes, not daring to look at this scene. The ministers were clear in their hearts that no matter how arrogant and vicious the princess of the great Qin country was, it was impossible for her to shoot a general's daughter in Mingqi's territory in front of so many people. But it was one thing to be clear in one's heart and another to see with one's eyes. They, as bystanders, felt their hearts beating fast. So what about Shan Miao? Shan Miao quietly watched and did not even close her eyes, but seriously stared at the arrow that was heading towards her, as if she wanted to see the arrow clearly. But in everyone's eyes, it was her calm and steady demeanor. The arrow made a xiao sound, but it was light and skillful. Just by a little bit, it just brushed past Shan Miao's head. He avoided the bright red apple by a hair's breadth. Shen Qiu, who was seated, suddenly heaved a sigh of relief, and Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan's tightly clenched hands slightly loosened. Feng and Ning and Luo Tan patted their chests, and Luo Ling picked up the teacup in front of him to drink a mouthful, to cover up his worried expression. The entire audience was silent. Huang Fuhao was originally smiling, but gradually he could not smile anymore. Princess Mingyan waited for a while, and did not hear any cheers or ridicule towards Shan Miao, and there was a bad premonition in her heart. She pulled off the black cloth that was covering her eyes, and saw that the apple on Shan Miao's head was still safe and sound, and her arrow was not far away. And that purple-clad young female, her hair was not messed up, her clothes were still intact, and there was no trace of panic on her face. She only looked at her lightly. "Your Princess Highness, just now it seemed that my hand slipped, and did not shoot." Did not shoot. That sentence was extremely light, but it seemed to contain the most complacent ridicule, making Princess Mingan's cheeks burn with pain. But after being stunned for a moment, Princess Mingan reacted. She looked at Shen Miao and said angrily, "You must have moved just now. It was you who moved. Bengong would never miss. If you did not move, how would Bengong miss?" No one expected that Princess Mingan would suddenly make things difficult, and even Emperor Wen Hui revealed an unhappy expression. "Is the princess saying that hundreds of people in this banquet are covering up for young Lady Shen?" Shen Miao stood perfectly straight, and from the beginning to the end, she did not even try to evade. Even though one did not know if it was fake or real. But if it was real, this female's courage was enough to make everyone in the world admire her. No matter how much Emperor Wen Hui feared the Shen family was after all Ming Qi's people. As the Emperor of Ming Qi, how could he let a Qin country's princess slander Shen Miao in front of him? One feared that today he would indulge Princess Mingan's nonsense, and tomorrow the emperor's prestige among the officials would plummet. Princess Mingan felt wronged in her heart and looked at Huang Fu Hao. Huang Fu Hao looked at her with a gloomy face, and Princess Mingan quivered. She did not dare to look at Huang Fu Hao again and turned to look at Prince Rui, who was standing at the side, and said sweetly, "Your Highness." Prince Rui had just seen clearly. Did the young lady of the Shen family hide? When she said those words, Princess Mingan softened her voice and stared at Prince Rui, which made everyone present feel somewhat ashamed. Prince Rui's lips hooked up. "No." Princess Mingan was surprised for a moment. "Your Highness, Prince Rui is saying that Shen Miao did not hide. Are you questioning this prince's eyes?" Prince Rui retorted. He looked to be infinitely graceful, and it was enough to make one's heart admire him. But when his voice was cold, it made one feel the chill and dare not look straight at him. Princess Mingan jumped in shock, but saw Shen Miao standing opposite and looking at her with a smile. "Your Princess Highness, since one is willing to bet, one must be willing to lose. Or is it that your Princess Highness cannot afford to lose?" Chapter 465. "You are presumptuous," Princess Mingan screamed. She suddenly saw the angry gazes that were directed at her from all directions, and suddenly understood that this was Ming Qi's territory, and screaming at Shen Miao had already angered the crowd. She looked at Shen Miao and suddenly sneered. Why would Bengong not be able to afford to lose? But, do not be too pleased with yourself too early. Bengong cannot shoot. Can you shoot? Princess Mingan's heart was filled with anger. Her archery skills had already reached the point of perfection, and this bow was the biggest bow that she had used since young. Princess Mingan had played with this kind of blindfolded archery for many years in the Qin country, and had never made a mistake. She originally wanted to give Shen Miao a little trouble, and in order to teach the Shen family a lesson for their rudeness, at the same time as shooting the apple, it would be easy to shoot Shen Miao's clothes to make her lose face, so how could she miss at the crucial moment? But under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Shen Miao did not evade, and this made her not know where the problem was. She proudly proposed a competition, but in the end not only did she not make Shen Miao lose face, she also did not shoot. If those princesses and princes of the Qin country knew about it, they would laugh at her. Thinking of this, Princess Mingan had some more disgust and resentment towards Shen Miao. Shen Miao looked at Princess Mingan's actions, and her heart turned slightly cold. In her previous life, she stayed in the Qin country for 5 years, and had dealings with this princess of the Qin country for 5 years. Shen Miao was clearer than anyone else what kind of temperament Princess Mingan had. Princess Mingan liked to tease her like this, to play the game of shooting in front of everyone. With one arrow, her hair would be blown apart, and with another arrow, her clothes would be torn apart, and occasionally accidentally, she would even graze her body. When Princess Mingan pulled the bow, she knew what Princess Mingan's idea was, which angle the arrow would fly from, and where it would land. After repeating the scene countless of times, how could she not be clear? She simply tilted her head slightly, and let the arrow coincidentally brush past her. No one would believe Princess Mingan's words, just like how no one believed Shen Miao's words in the beginning. being wronged, misunderstood, and made a fool of, it should be let this noble princess personally enjoy it. Of course it was not only this. Shun Miao took the bright red apple and smiled. If it was me, I would ask your Princess Highness to bite this apple in your mouth. At the beginning the audience was still discussing in a low voice, but when they heard what Shun Miao said, there was a moment of silence. Princess Mingan's eyes widened and looked at Shun Miao in disbelief. What did you say? Her voice became sharper, and because of the anxiety, it was unpleasant to hear. Shun Miao looked at her with a smile, and there was still a bit of innocence in her eyes. Princess, didn't you say that this is the game of the Great Qin dynasty? The archer will choose where to place the apple. Your Royal Highness wanted to put the apple on my head, so I let it go. Now, she smiled generously, if your Royal Highness is afraid, you can change to someone else. It was better if she did not say those words, but when she said those words, Princess Mingan was so angry that she almost flipped over. If it was another person, would it not mean that she, Princess Mingan, was timid and could not afford to lose, and would lose all her face in front of the Mingqi, the great Liang in the Qin country? Yi Peilan sucked in a breath of cold air and said to Shen Yu, is she crazy? How dare she go against Princess Mingan? Originally in the academy examinations, Shun Miao and Kai Lin confronted each other because Shen Xian's official position was not lower than Kai Darren's. But now that the other party was a princess of a country, it was really beyond one's expectations that Shun Miao dared to provoke. Kai Lin and Kai Darren looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Initially they thought that Shun Miao was targeting him, but now it seemed that Shun Miao did not even put a country's princess in her eyes, so what else was there to say? Chapter 466. The prince's banquet was also filled with sighs. Prince Li smiled with deep meaning. This young lady of the Shun family is really vengeful. Princess Mingan stared at Shun Miao, and facing her sharp gaze, Shun Miao only smiled lightly. In helplessness, Princess Mingan could only look to Huang Fu Hao for help. Huang Fu Hao lightly coughed and was somewhat angry that Shun Miao did not know how to appreciate favors. Princess Mingan also represented the face of the Great Qin, and he could not let Princess Mingan be dissatisfied. Thus he looked at Emperor Wen Hui and then glanced at Shun Miao. It is only a game. Why is the young lady of Mingqi so unforgiving? Emperor Wen Hui looked at the Shun family. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan were drinking tea by themselves, as if they did not hear the words from above. Shun Qiu and Luo Ling looked up unruffled, but did not express their stance. Feng and Ning and Luo Tan stared at Princess Mingan with indignation in their eyes. The Shun family's attitude was very clear, and they did not intend to let it go like that, so they were obviously going against Princess Mingan. Shun Xian also had anger in his stomach. Just now Princess Mingan was so aggressive that Shun Miao had no way out, and now it was Princess Mingan's turn to have a taste of this. Do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself. When Princess Mingan schemed against others, she should have thought of what it was like to be schemed against herself. Since the Shun family was already placed in the teeth of the wind and waves, and since the Qin country's people were targeting the Shun family, then there was nothing to worry about. When Shen Xian's violent temper came up, he thought that a barefooted person would not be afraid of someone wearing shoes, so even if he shot Princess Mingan to death today, it would not matter. Emperor Wen Hui looked at Shun Xian's attitude and his heart understood. Shun Xian was protective of his shortcomings, not to mention that it was related to Shun Miao. Since Shun Xian wanted to be the target, Emperor Wen Hui was happy to see it happen. Moreover, he did not like Princess Mingan's arrogant and willful temperament that did not put Mingqi in her eyes, and planned to kill Princess Mingan's prestige, so he smiled at Huang Fu Hao. It is a game between children, why the crown prince need to be so worried? Since they are playing happily, Zhen will naturally not stop them. Huang Fu Hao did not expect that the Shun family was a hard nail, and even more did not expect that Emperor Wen Hui, this old fox, would sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Thus he did not have any other way. Moreover, the ministers of Mingqi gradually became bolder and started to whisper. If they were to really reject, then the Qin country's face would really be gone. He gave Princess Mingan a warning glare. Mingan, since it is you who suggested it, then play with young lady Shun till the end. He glanced at Shun Miao again and said meaningfully, since Shun young lady is playing, she will definitely not hurt you. The unspoken meaning was that if anything happened to Princess Ming'an, Shen Miao would definitely pay the price. Shen Miao only smiled when she heard such threats. Rest assured, Your Princess Highness, since we did not sign the life and death agreement, this official's daughter will not hurt Your Princess Highness. The more she said that, the more uneasy Princess Ming'an felt. But now that she was riding a tiger, it was hard to get off, so she could only do as Shen Miao said. Walking to the other side, Princess Ming'an's eyes were like knives that were cutting Shen Miao's body. She suddenly thought of something and her eyes brightened up as she smiled. But young lady Shen, Bengong's bow is not something that anyone can pull. One fear that you, before the words cannot pull it up, could be said. One saw that Shen Miao had already pulled the bow easily. It was different from Princess Ming'an's strenuous pulling. Shen Miao's posture was extremely beautiful and the pull was very relaxed, as if this bow had been with her for decades, and she was very proficient in it. She smiled at Princess Ming'an, and faced Princess Ming'an's incredulous gaze. She lightly said, "Good bow. Your Princess Highness bow, I am also very comfortable with it. Many thanks." Chapter 467. She waved her hand and instructed the maid to tie the black cloth over her eyes. Just as the maid was about to move, she saw Prince Rue picking up the black cloth on the maid's tray and playing with it. Everyone looked at him strangely. Prince Rue walked to Shen Miao's back and held her chin with one hand to lift her head up slightly, while the other hand wrapped the black cloth around Shen Miao's eyes. Luo Tan's eyes widened and pulled Feng and Ning. What is the meaning of this? Prince Rue's action made Luo Tan curious. Emperor Wen Hui, who was sitting on the high seat, slightly frowned, and Princess Ming'an looked at Shen Miao with jealousy and killing intent in her eyes. Shen Miao was tied up and could not see anything clearly, and could only feel that the person behind her was gentle and gentle. His fingertips were cold, and when it accidentally touched Shen Miao's cheeks, it was like snowflakes kissing the clothes, and there was a faint coolness. But for some reason, the places that were touched started to heat up again. When the people behind no longer moved, Shen Miao then faced the direction of Princess Ming'an and knocked an arrow. Everyone held their breath as they watched her actions with rapt attention, and their hearts were extremely nervous. Some people secretly complained why Shen Miao would do this, to let Princess Ming'an bite the apple in her mouth, and it would be able to humiliate Princess Ming'an. But this also meant that if Shen Miao was not careful, she would injure Princess Ming'an, and even lose her life. The princess of the Qin country lost her life in the Ming Qi, so how would the Qin country leave it at that? Even if Shen Miao sacrificed her life, it would not be enough, and would implicate the entire Ming Qi. If one wanted to let Princess Ming'an be safe and sound, one could only deliberately shoot to the side, and as such the Ming Qi would lose face. Thinking about it, only if Shen Miao shot the apple in Princess Ming'an's mouth would she be able to win beautifully. However, that was almost impossible. Huangfu Hao stared at Shen Miao. Others were not clear, but Princess Ming'an was his younger sister, so he naturally knew how heavy Princess Ming'an's bow was. Ordinary women wouldn't be able to pull the bow. Even those who were skilled in martial arts and had some foundation in martial arts would have to practice with the bow for a while, not to mention women. Even men would have to practice with the bow for a while. But just now when Shen Miao casually pulled the bow, that kind of skillful posture, skillful gestures, and relaxed expression made people suspect that she had already touched this bow countless times before to be able to use it so smoothly. However, that was simply impossible. It was Princess Ming'an's first time in the Qin country, and it was also Shen Miao's first time touching this bow. Huangfu Hao's heart suddenly had some interest as he looked at Shen Miao as if he had seen something new, and his gaze became deeper. Shen Miao was completely unaware of it. She closed her eyes and her hands caressed the patterns on the arrows. Every tiny scratch on the heavy bow. It was exactly the same as his previous life. She had touched this bow countless of times, and Princess Ming'an would always generously pass the bow to her when she was in a sorry state. "It is your turn." In fact, Shen Miao had secretly practiced countless of times, and she could hit the target, but every time she would deliberately shoot far away, and be laughed at by the princesses and princes of Ming Qi. Because she was a hostage, she should compromise, and live under others' charity, and not be arrogant and despotic. Even if she could win, she must lose, and lose to make Princess Ming'an happy, so that she would have the chance to return alive to see Fu Ming and Wan Yu. Those most difficult years were engraved in her heart like the simple and unadorned patterns on the bow. His forbearance from his previous life could finally be displayed openly now. She was no longer the Empress of Mingqi, but could freely and fearlessly attack Princess Ming'an, just like what Princess Ming'an did to her. Chapter 468. She said, "Trouble your Princess Highness not to dodge." Finishing, her hands loosened and the almost fully drawn bow made a bong sound as the arrow shot towards Princess Ming'an like a meteor. Princess Ming'an was so scared that her eyes blurred. That arrow came too fast and she wanted to dodge, but it was too late. She felt a pain in her mouth as the arrow was right in front of her eyes. She wanted to scream, but with the apple in her mouth, her body softened and she collapsed. The palace maids behind quickly supported her, and Huangfu Hao stood up all of a sudden with a gloomy expression. The hall was filled with sighs, but Shen Miao took off the black cloth that was tied around her eyes and walked over to the fainted Princess Ming'an and took out the apple from Princess Ming'an's mouth. On the bright red apple, half of the arrowhead entered and the remaining half of the arrowhead was outside. It would not pierce Princess Ming'an's throat, but one could see it clearly. All hit. It seems that this official's daughter's luck is very good. As luck would have it, all hit. She smiled. With a hua sound, the hall was suddenly filled with sighs. The officials of Mingqi were first stunned before their faces flushed with joy and started to applaud. Someone said, "Like father, like daughter." It was Princess Ming'an who suggested to compete in archery, and Shen Miao had no choice but to accept it. But at the end, Princess Ming'an did not hit, but Shen Miao hit, and Princess Ming'an even fainted from fright. Who was strong and who was weak, one would know with one look. Emperor Wenhui had many suspicions towards the Shen family, but now that Shen Miao had helped him gain a lot of face and made the Qin country suffer, Emperor Wenhui was now very happy. He looked at Shen Exan. "General Shen, you have raised a good daughter." Shen Exan cupped his hands and said that he did not dare. Shen Miao stood in the hall and there was a slight wind that blew the corner of her skirt up like a blooming flower. She quietly stared at Princess Ming'an, who was being supported by the maids, and restrained all kinds of emotions in her eyes. When she turned her head, she met Prince Rui's gaze. One could not see what kind of expression was under the mask, but this man's gaze was warm and cool, making one somewhat confused. One did not know if he was smiling or not, but he glanced at Shen Miao before walking back to the VIP seats to sit down. Huangfu Hao felt that he had lost face, but he did not know how to redeem it. Today's matter was sudden and it was caused by Princess Ming'an, but to reach such a stage, Shen Miao was inextricably involved. Looking at Shen Miao, Huangfu Hao snorted coldly. One did not think that young Lady Shen would have such skills. Shen Miao lowered her head and returned to her own seat. She was always so gentle and harmless. She was clearly merciless when she shot the arrows, but now she had a dignified demeanor, as if she was not the one who wielded the saber and spear. She was noble and dignified. Even if she wanted to say something out of anger, under this kind of attitude, it was as if the principles of Buddhism were on her side, making people speechless. "Shen Miao, just now you really..." Feng Aning pulled her hands. "If you were a male, I would marry you. Revenge with enmity, it is really delightful." Luo Tan also said, "Biao youngest sister, I know that you are not one to be bullied." In the Shaochun city, the Luo family had some understanding of Shen Miao's temperament. Weak and easily bullied? Only blind people would think so. Shen Miao's eyes drooped down. Everyone thought that she held a grudge, and because Princess Ming'an pressured her, she repaid it in such a manner. One did not know that her arrow resolved the hatred of the past lifetime. Facing Fu Xiuyi, such a scheming person, naturally one had to plan step by step. As for a person like Princess Ming'an, if she did not return the humiliation she suffered in the past lifetime, she would not be able to live up to her rebirth. Some people needed to endure, and some people who could not bear it would come knocking on the door. She handled things carefully, but on some matters she still had a consistent temper. With the protection of the family, and the bargaining chip, why would she not dare to go against Princess Ming'an? That would be slapping her face. Chapter 469. Luoling handed over a cup of hot tea and asked warmly, "Is Biao youngest sister all right?" "Nothing," she replied with a smile. She was sensitive to feel that there was a clear gaze on her, but when she looked around no one was looking over, so she thought that it was her misconception. At the seats of the distinguished guests, the youth wearing a mask bent his fingers and flicked the wine cup in front of him. There was a white jade ring on his fingertips that was glowing with a faint jade color. It was a good tribute banquet, but no one expected that there would be such an unforeseen event in the middle. But if one were to investigate the reason, it was Princess Ming-An's own fault. And Shenxian, who had just returned to the capital to resume his official position, with this unyielding attitude and Shen Miao's beautiful win, once again made a name for himself in the Ming Qi's tribute banquet. No matter what the outcome was, with Shenxian's high profile, it made others somewhat fearful. At the prince's banquet, Fu Xiuyi's expression had already changed from the initial calm and composed to a calm and collected look, and from time to time he would look at Shenxian's side. Occasionally he would look past Shenxian and stop at the purple-clad young female who was sitting quietly. It was not only her. There were a lot of gazes that were sizing up Shen Miao. There were young talents that felt that Shen Miao attracted attention, and naturally there were also Huangfu Hao's gaze that made others feel uncomfortable. At the end, even a careless person like Luotan also noticed it and said, "Why is everyone looking at Biao youngest sister? Are people not allowed to eat?" Luoling smiled and said to Shen Miao, "Biao youngest sister and I exchanged positions." Luoling's position was slightly closer to the inside, and after Shen Miao exchanged positions with him, Luoling's tall stature was able to block her, and also block some probing gazes, and for a moment it was much more comfortable. Until the end of the tribute banquet, there were no other matters. Huangfu Hao left halfway, and said that he wanted to see Princess Ming-An, who had fainted from fright. Naturally no one stopped him, but everyone was well aware that after a few days, Princess Ming-An would hate Shen Miao. Even though Shen Miao had Shenxian's protection, it would be easy for Princess Ming-An to find an excuse to make things difficult for Shen Miao. Everyone's gaze towards Shen Miao unconsciously had a little sympathy. Only Shen Yu and entourage felt pleased when they saw Shen Miao. Most likely Shen Wan wanted to get close to Shenxian, but now that Shenxian was reinstated and was invited back by Emperor Wen Hui, it would not be a good thing for the relationship between the brothers to be too stiff. But this time, Shenxian had made up his mind. He did not even look sideways when he passed by Shen Wan, and did not have the slightest intention of greeting him. Everyone saw this and understood in their hearts. When Shenxian was forced to leave the capital, the news of him separating from the Shen family was known by the entire capital. It had always been easy to add flowers to a brocade but difficult to send charcoal in the snow. Now that Shenxian had made a comeback and Shen Wan had come to greet him, any man with guts would not bother about it. In terms of cleaning up, Shenxian had the upper hand. Shen Wan also did not crazily stick to the cold buttocks. Shenxian did not pay attention to him, so he did not impatiently go forward. The two brothers were like strangers. After the banquet, some of Shenxian's former colleagues came over to greet him. Luo Shuiyan brought Shen Miao outside to wait for the carriage to arrive. Luo Tan skipped in front and Feng and Ning had already gone back with Feng Foran while Luo Ling and Shen Qiu walked at the back. After turning through a palace door, there was the horse carriage that Shenxian had arranged. Shen Miao turned her head and coincidentally saw that at the end of the long corridor in the palace, there was a slender figure slowly walking over. Before one could see the appearance clearly, one could see from afar that the silver mask on his face shone brightly under the light of the lantern, and the embroidered pattern on the corner of the robe was especially clear in the night. One could not see clearly what kind of texture it was and only felt that it was extraordinarily gorgeous. Shen Miao looked at it carefully. When that youth walked to a distance away from Shen Miao, he stopped and tilted his head slightly. One did not know if he was looking at this side. Shen Miao looked at him quietly. In the night, the long corridor in the palace was deep and serene. This person was covered in the moonlight as he stepped on the swaying shadows of the trees. One could not see clearly what expression he had, but one felt that he was like an immortal demon from a painting. He slowly stretched out his hand and his fingers slightly bent before lightly knocking 3 times on the pillar at the palace door. Shen Qiu and Luo Ling discovered that Shen Miao did not follow over. Shen Qiu walked in front of Shen Miao and asked, "Younger sister, what are you looking at?" "Nothing." Shen Miao recovered to her senses and said, "Go to the horse carriage and wait first." The wind outside is strong so that one would not catch a cold. Luoling said warmly. Shen Miao nodded her head and lifted her feet to walk towards the horse carriage. But she suddenly stopped her footsteps and turned her head to look at the long corridor. The moonlight in the corridor was like water, and the flowers painted an intoxicating picture on the ground. When the breeze blew past, the flowers trembled and there was no figure in the empty corridor. It was as if everything just now was an illusion. Luotan's soft urging voice was heard. Shen Miao turned around and closed her eyes before lifting the corner of her skirt up the horse carriage. Chapter 470. On the way back, Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not speak much. Even though they tried to look relaxed on the surface, they still revealed some seriousness. Shen Qiu was also not his usual self. Even though Luotan had a carefree temperament, she was sensitive enough to sense that something was not right and did not speak. Today one had offended Princess Ming'an, which also meant offending the crown prince of the Qin country. The Shen family had just returned and was pushed to the teeth of the wind and waves. Even though Shen Xian tried his best to avoid it, it was like there was an invisible hand behind his back that pushed the Shen family out. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan were not afraid of any difficulties that might appear. But since Shen Miao appeared today, they were afraid that Princess Ming'an would hate Shen Miao and use underhanded means to trip them up. But things had already happened, and when the water comes, the earth will cover it. When the soldiers come, the generals will counter them. The only way was to better protect Shen Miao and not let any slip-ups happen. By the time they returned to the residence, Shen Miao had entered her own courtyard to freshen up, and it was already somewhat late. She lit the oil lamp, and when Guyu saw that she did not have the intention to rest, she said, "Is young lady still worried about tonight's matter?" "It doesn't matter. With master and madam around, they won't let the Qin princess do anything stupid." Shen Miao shook her head. She was clearer than others what kind of temperament Princess Ming'an had. Princess Ming'an's temperament was very selfish and strong, and during the tribute banquet in the previous lifetime, Princess Ming'an also made things difficult for her. It was because Princess Ming'an thought that Fu Xiui was such an outstanding person, but he married such a vulgar wife and was very disdainful. Now that the great Liang's people had changed to Prince Rui, the most outstanding person in Princess Ming'an's eyes had become Prince Rui, but she still did not let her off. Perhaps this was what people said: some people's enmity was destined by the heavens, no matter how many lifetimes were separated. "All of you go down," Shen Miao said. "I cannot sleep and will play chess for a while." Guyu still wanted to say something, but Jingzhe pulled her sleeves. Jingzhe said, "Then these servants will withdraw first. Young lady must not think too much. When one feels tired later, then rest early and do not tire one's body. The night is cold, so don't stay up too late." Shen Miao complied and Jingzhe and Guyu retreated. On the small table in front of the table, there was an empty chessboard. Shen Miao held the white pieces in one hand and the black pieces in the other as she seriously played with herself. She played seriously. Time slowly passed, and the chess game gradually changed from nothing at the beginning to black and white crisscrossing, appearing extremely complicated. In the beginning, she was able to play the game with ease, but later on, she had to think hard for a long time before she placed a piece. It was so quiet outside the courtyard that one could not even hear the chirping of the birds and the chirping of the insects as the Ding capital fell into a beautiful dream. A cool breeze was blowing in the courtyard. Shen Miao looked at the chessboard and gently exhaled. Over the past 2 years, the various forces had taken turns to enter the stage, and the chess pieces that had been arranged had already reached their positions. From a certain point of view, even if they had the upper hand, they might not necessarily be able to achieve successive victories. This was a game between her and Fu Xiui, but now it seemed that she still thought of some things too simply. Everything in this world was changing. She was changing. She was no longer the her from her previous life. Naturally, other people would change as well. The only thing that didn't change was the change itself. No one could predict what kind of changes these changes would bring to the game. She glanced at the chess game on the table, stood up, walked to the window and opened it. The rustling autumn wind that blew in from the window gave rise to some coolness. The shadows of the trees swayed in front of the window. She looked at it for a while before turning around. The oil lamp in the room had burned to the last bit, and the candle flame flickered before extinguishing. When the lamp was extinguished, the moonlight flowed into the room like flowing water, illuminating the room. It was a little cooler than the lights. A sound was heard from the front of the table. One did not know when a person was sitting in front of the chessboard. He held a black piece in his hand and casually placed it on the board before raising his head to look at Shan Miao. Chapter 471. The purple gold robe looked even more gorgeous under the moonlight, and that pattern seemed to be somewhat familiar. It was clearly an arrogant posture, but it was blocked by the half-silver mask, making it look somewhat profound. Shan Miao was not surprised that there was an uninvited person in the middle of the night. She closed the windows without a change in expression, and the room suddenly became dark again. Shan Miao walked to the table and fumbled for a match to light another lamp. Under the warm yellow halo, the fragrance of the clothes and the shadow of the hair seemed exceptionally ambiguous. Shan Miao held the lamp and walked to the opposite of that person to sit down. "You are waiting for me?" The purple-clad youth's voice was low, and it was exceptionally pleasant to hear in the night. Because he deliberately suppressed it, it was somewhat hoarse, but it was like a lover's whisper beside one's ear. His voice was also smiling and seemed to be very happy. Shan Miao stared at the mask on his face. Even the mask could not hide his good looks. That beautiful chin and red lips, on the contrary, because it was covering his true appearance, it was more mysterious and more captivating. It was rumored that everyone in the imperial family of the Great Liang were beautiful. She had never seen Prince Rui's true appearance but knew that just based on elegance, this person was already outstanding enough. "Your Highness knocked 3 times on the pillar. Is it not to remind this official's daughter to visit at the 3rd watch? This official's daughter does not dare to disobey," she answered. When those words were said, Shan Miao saw it clearly. The lips of the person opposite hooked up and said, "Really smart." His attitude was clearly frivolous and even somewhat romantic, but one did not know why it made one feel some distance. As if one knew the indifference and cruelty in this person's bones. Shan Miao quietly looked at him and said, "What words does your Highness want to say to this official's daughter?" The purple-clad youth casually picked up a black chess piece from the chess basket and played with it. The slender white hand holding the black chess piece showed a kind of exquisite beauty. He swept a glance at the chess game and said, "This chess game is indeed interesting. Little girl, the winds and clouds of the world are all placed in the chess game by you. One do not know where is the Great Liang? Which piece is this prince's chess piece?" He was actually able to see through this chess game with one glance, as it was the current situation of Mingqi. Shan Miao did not speak. His voice was lazy with some indifference. "This prince saw you at the tribute banquet today and seemed to be old acquaintances with Princess Ming'an. You have seen Princess Ming'an?" Shan Miao's heart tightened. She naturally knew Princess Ming'an, and other than Huang Fu Hao, no one would have any doubts about today's performance. One was a princess of the Qin country, and the other was a young lady of an official's family in the Mingqi. The Qin country and the Mingqi were separated by thousands of miles, and it was Princess Ming'an's first time coming to the Mingqi, so no one would link her with Princess Ming'an. However, the words of the person in front of him tore apart the surface mercilessly and exposed the truth. What did he discover? What did you find? Furthermore, he was able to sense that something was amiss just from the few encounters they had at the banquet. If it was the latter, then the man in front of him was simply too terrifying. However, her eyebrows did not move. Her fingers in her sleeves tightened slightly, and a smile appeared on her face. Unfortunately, this official's daughter had not seen Princess Ming'an before, but is acquainted with His Highness Prince Rui. The purple-clad youth turned his head to look at her and suddenly placed both his hands on the table as he leaned forward and whispered in her ear, "Oh? When?" Shan Miao looked at the person in front of her. His breathing was gentle but the golden buttons were cold. There was a smile on his lips but his eyes were somewhat indifferent. One did not know if this was a man of fire or ice, but his entire body was filled with danger. He was attractive enough but it made Shan Miao instinctively want to avoid him. That pair of dark eyes that were as deep as the sea stared at her. She lowered her head and avoided the other's meaningful gaze, and stared at the exquisite embroidered buttons in front of her before lightly saying, "Long time no see, Xie Jing Xing." Chapter 472. The air seemed to be still at that moment. In the oil lamp, the sparks made a small pi-li-pa-la sound and a small flame fell down. In the dark night, it lit up for a moment before disappearing. Shen Miao raised her head and looked at him. The purple-clad youth smiled faintly as he looked at Shen Miao. Both of their shadows were reflected on the ground, showing a lingering posture, as if he was the one who turned his head to kiss Shen Miao. He slowly retracted his hand and returned to his own position. His voice was still cheerful as he said, "Trust that you have been well, Shen Miao." The purple-clad youth reached out to remove the mask on his face. Sword-like eyebrows, affectionate starry eyes, a nose that was hanging and lips that were painted with rouge. It was as if yesterday he was still a handsome youth with red lips and white teeth, but after 2 years, he was a truly handsome man. The smile on his lips was as usual slightly ridiculing and mischievous, but there was no longer the arrogance of a youth in his eyes. That was a kind of depth that made one's heart palpitate. It was as if the dark night was beautiful because of the stars, but the darkness made one terrified. His noble and elegant demeanor was displayed to the extreme after 2 years, and every move had the innate arrogance of a noble. It was as cold as the clear moon, but as dazzling as the scorching sun. Without the restriction of his identity, the Xie Jingxing who appeared again and no longer restrained his brilliance, was so dazzling that one could not ignore him. He looked at Shen Miao with a smile that was not a smile and said ambiguously, "Not seeing for 2 years, who gave you the courage to call my name?" He said it like that, but in the end he had changed this prince to me. Shen Miao said, "Now you are not the little marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and in the Mingqi, and do not like to call you by your name. It is also possible to call you Prince Rui." There was finally some sarcasm in the words. From the residence of the Marquis of Lin and in the Mingqi to the younger brother of Emperor Yonglu of the Great Liang. This time Xie Jingxing had indeed gone astray. But Shen Miao said it politely, but she had underestimated Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing smiled lazily. "It is indifferent to insist on calling my name. But one forgot to tell you that Xie Yuan is my real name and Jingxing is my courtesy name. When you call me Xie Jingxing, you are calling me by my little courtesy name. Why? You've grown up and become more passionate." The smile on his lips was evil and frivolous. "Have we reached the point of calling each other little?" Shen Miao glared at him. Other than relatives, only lovers and husband and wife would call each other little. Shen Miao did not expect that after Xie Jingxing changed his identity, Jingxing actually became his little character. Speaking of which, she then remembered that Emperor Yonglu of the Great Liang was also surnamed Xie, and the imperial family of the Liang dynasty was the Xie family. What a coincidence! Xie Jingxing was minding his own business pouring tea for himself. After 2 years, Shen Xian had already moved out of the general residence and opened another residence. Xie Jingxing came uninvited and acted as if he was at home as usual. Just like 2 years ago, he treated the Shen mansion as his own courtyard and could come and go as he pleased. He took a sip of tea and glanced at the angry Shen Miao and seemed to find it very interesting. Courtesy demands reciprocity. "What do you want me to call you, Jiao Jiao?" That voice of Jiao Jiao was so sweet that it left a fragrance on one's cheeks. In addition to Xie Jingxing's moving beauty, if it was a normal female, one would have long been bewitched. Shen Miao's body was also hot from being called. She thought that even if Xie Jingxing did not have the identity of the imperial family, he would be able to live well as a prostitute in a small brothel. Perhaps he could even be famous throughout the world. "What are you thinking about?" Xie Jingxing asked. "Thinking that you are born with such beauty that even the top hostess in a small brothel cannot be compared to you. No wonder you need to wear a mask to hide." Shen Miao deliberately angered him. Chapter 473. Xie Jingxing choked and one did not know what he was thinking about as his lazy expression stiffened for a moment. When Shen Miao saw him like this, her heart was extremely carefree. Before she could speak, Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "To be so worried about me, it seems that you are in love with me?" Shen Miao said. "Does Prince Rui know how to write the words thinking too much?" She was disgusted by Xie Jingxing's little words and could not call him little Marquis Xie, so Shen Miao simply used the cold Prince Rui instead, obviously wanting to draw a clear line. "In the beginning when you hugged me and kissed me, you were not this heartless," he said. Shun Miao stared at him incredulously with wide eyes but did not know that this appearance was like a deer that was just born in the mountain stream, with clear and round black eyes that were very delicate. She said, "What do you mean by your words?" Xie Jingxing reached out and pinched her face. His action was too fast and Shun Miao could not dodge in time. When she reacted, Xie Jingxing had already retracted his hand and thought for a moment before saying, "It seems that you do not remember. On the first night you left the capital, I had bid farewell to you." Shun Miao was stunned and looked at him without speaking. Xie Jingxing sighed. Indeed, after drinking wine, one do not recognize others. "You do not remember what you did to me?" Shun Miao's face revealed a tangled expression. As the saying goes, one's temperament will be messed up after drinking. Her alcohol tolerance was actually not bad, but the plum blossom wine that night was too intoxicating. She wanted to prevent herself from saying the wrong things and causing others to be suspicious, so she avoided everyone and slept alone in a room. She did not think that Xie Jingxing came over? Prince Rue must be joking. Prince Rue and I are just acquaintances, what can I do? Shun Miao suppressed the uneasiness in her heart but her face was calm. But she knew very little about the matters between men and women, and in her previous life, she only blindly fawned over Fu Xiuyi and was not clear about a male's thoughts. In this aspect she was really as immature as a white paper. And to deal with a black-hearted person like Xie Jingxing, she was really too inexperienced. Xie Jingxing smiled and was not in a hurry to refute and spoke unhurriedly. "You seem to want to be an empress. After getting drunk, you still want to pull Li Gonggong to watch the fireworks and even want the crown prince and princess to accompany." He looked at Shun Miao with interest. "Empress Shun?" Shun Miao was originally trying to cover up the tea she was drinking and almost spurted it out. How many years had it been since she heard this form of address? For a moment, Shun Miao almost thought that she was dreaming. She feared that after her rebirth, she was filled with flowers and the reality of her loved ones was just a beautiful dream, and after she woke up, she would still be in that cold palace, walking step by step towards the end of her family being wiped out. Shun Miao's entire body stiffened and she had to admit a fact. She originally thought that Xie Jingxing deliberately said that to trick her, but now it seemed that Xie Jingxing really came that night and really saw the scene after she was drunk. Otherwise, Xie Jingxing was not a deity. How could he know so many things? But how much did she say and how much did Xie Jingxing hear? Xie Jingxing was so smart, how much did he guess? When Xie Jingxing saw her uneasy look, his eyes darkened but his lips hooked up into a smile. "There is no need to be so afraid. I have always been tolerant towards women. Do you want to know what you did to this king?" "What did I do?" Shun Miao looked at him calmly. "Nothing much." Xie Jingxing lazily supported his chin with his hand and seemed to be thinking, but the words that he said were shocking. "You only hugged me and did not let me go, pressed me down and kissed me, cried and shouted that you want to be my empress, and wanted me not to neglect you." Shun Miao, "I did not do that kind of thing." Shun Miao said. No matter how drunk she was, she would not have any beautiful thoughts towards Xie Jingxing. Moreover, that kind of style was not her style of doing things. Chapter 474. You want to deny? Xie Jingxing frowned. "This is not honest, Shun Jiaojiao. I will give you money." Shun Miao made a prompt decision. "I can compensate you however much you want." Xie Jingxing quietly looked at her for a while and Shun Miao did not know why, but she felt that his gaze was like a knife, as if Xie Jingxing could not wait to kill her. After a long while, Xie Jingxing then smiled and gritted his teeth. "Do you treat me as a prostitute or a male pet?" "Money. This prince is never short of money." Shun Miao was silent. Xie Jingxing took a deep breath and said, "How did you discover it?" Shun Miao did not expect him to change the topic and asked puzzledly, "What?" Xie Jingxing picked up the mask on the table. "How did you discover my identity? 2 years ago I died in battle and no matter what, it is not reasonable to guess my identity upon meeting." "One had already guessed it before seeing you," Shun Miao said. "Guessed that you are from the Great Liang but did not guess that you are from the imperial family. Afterwards, when one saw you at the tribute banquet, one vaguely felt that you were familiar and boldly guessed it." When Xie Jingxing heard it, he gradually frowned and looked at Shun Miao. "Guessed it 2 years ago?" That night in Wulong Temple, the little marquis came over to drink tea and eat snacks. Shen Miao's expression was calm. Luckily I was able to eat a little of that snack. Xie Jingxing raised his brows. So what about it? Unfortunately, Shen Miao said, that snack seemed to be made by the Great Liang Imperial family's chef, and the taste was very delicious. Xie Jingxing was slightly startled. 2 years ago, he encountered the scene of Shen Miao framing Shenqing and Prince Yuan Wulong Temple, and because of interest, he simply went to her room with Shen Miao. Because he was out running all night and was hungry, he borrowed Shen Miao's tea to eat some snacks. He even fed Shen Miao a piece. He himself was working in Mingqi and was at the end living like a prince. The Great Liang's pastry chef was also by his side, and that bag of pastries came from the hands of the Great Liang chef. Xie Jingxing had thought of many clues that Shen Miao could guess his identity, but he never expected that it would be this. A bag of pastries would actually reveal some clues. But his eyes were sharp as he looked at Shen Miao. How do you know that this was made by the Great Liang chef? I was fortunate to eat it once, Shen Miao said. She had indeed eaten it once. In Mingqi's tribute banquet, naturally there would be congratulatory gifts from other countries. As for the pastries, it was just a small gimmick. Emperor Yonglu of Mingqi loved to eat pastries, so the imperial family's chef was ingenious and added fruit juice into the pastries, giving the pastries a fruity flavor. It was because of the novelty of eating cold pastries during the tribute banquet that Shen Miao specially made it for Fu Xiuyi a few times. It was just that Fu Xiuyi did not like to eat sweets and would always give it to the servants, making her sad for a while. And the pastries that Xie Jingxing ate that night had the fruity flavor of the Liang imperial family's pastries. And at that time the tributes had not been paid yet, so it was impossible for the pastries to be passed over. At that time Shen Miao felt strange. Although Xie Jingxing didn't know where Shen Miao ate this cake, he didn't ask much. That's all? It was just a lucky guess. Shen Miao's eyes hung down. Just based on a bag of pastries, how could she be sure that Xie Jingxing was from the Great Liang? The real suspicion started from that imperial physician Gao Yang that she saw in the palace. At that time she only felt that he was familiar, but later on she finally remembered that she had seen this imperial physician Gao before. In the tribute banquet in the previous lifetime, the people that the Great Liang sent over were a prince of first rank and an important minister. That important minister was a famous think tank in the Great Liang, and at that time Fu Xiuyi let Pei Lang pay more attention to this person. It was not anyone else but Gao Yang. Gao Yang's identity at that time was not some imperial physician Gao, but a minister of the Great Liang. And that day in Mingqi's palace, she saw that there was a familiarity between Xie Jingxing and Gao Yang, and in addition to the pastries previously, she more or less made some connections. Chapter 475. Afterward she went to the northwestern region, and the news of Xie Jingxing's death came. After the previous shock, Shen Miao slowly calmed down. In the previous lifetime, Xie Jingxing should not have gone to war at this time, but in the previous lifetime and this lifetime, Xie Jingxing had the same ending. Shen Miao did not believe in fate. Moreover, with her understanding of Xie Jingxing in this lifetime, she did not believe that such a powerful person like Xie Jingxing would die so miserably. If one were to say that Xie Jingxing was planning something with this step, she would somewhat believe it. If one were to say that dying in battle would allow one to start over with a new identity, and there would be less trouble, it would be in line with this person's straightforward character. One had to know that with the identity of the little Marquis of the Linan Prefecture, one would not be able to support Xie Jingxing's ambition. What exactly was his ambition? Shen Miao's gaze landed on the black and white chessboard, and a trace of horror flashed in her heart. Your luck has always been good. Xie Jingxing looked at her calmly. But Shen Miao hesitated for a moment and finally could not help but ask, how did you become the current Prince Rui? Did Xie Jingxing create a fake identity? If that was the case, his guts were really too big. The person he impersonated was not someone else but the imperial family of the Great Liang, and was even Emperor Yongli's younger brother. If it was discovered, one feared that dying 1,000 times was not enough. But if it was true, then what was his identity for the past 10 years? Why would he become Xie Ding's son in Mingqi? I was originally Prince Rui of the Great Liang dynasty, Xie Jingxing said. Now it is returned to its rightful owner. Shen Miao's heart moved. Marquis Xie is not your father? Xie Jingxing smiled in disdain. Marquis of Linen? What qualifications does he have to be my father? That meant that Xie Jingxing was not Xie Ding's biological son. Shen Miao's heart became more and more aghast. Xie Jingxing's identity would most likely involve a lot of things, and she had never paid attention to these things in the previous lifetime. Shen Miao suddenly thought of how in the previous lifetime, Fu Xiuyi did not spare any effort to suppress Xie Jingxing, and did not hesitate to arrange his people in the Xie family's army. At the end, Xie Jingxing died in the hands of his own people, and the Xie father and son were buried on the battlefield. Other than Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao, there were no other descendants in the Xie family. Was it really because the Fu family wanted to attack the Xie family for their meritorious deeds? Or Fu Xiuyi had already discovered that Xie family's identity was not right? Fu Xiuyi wanted to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots? When Xie Jingxing saw her flickering expression, his eyes became deep and his smile became even more gentle. His appearance had grown. His handsomeness and beauty were perfectly blended together. He was both good and evil at the same time. He was very good-looking. He knocked on the table. "You've made a lot of progress in meeting an old friend today." Shen Miao recovered to her senses and said as she looked at him, "Prince Rui is also very glorious now." From the residence of the Marquis of Linan's little Xie Marquis to the current Prince Rui, Xie Jingxing became more and more valuable. Originally in the Ding capital, he could walk sideways in Mingqi, but now that Prince Rui's reputation was out, one feared that he would ascend to the heavens. "Are you satisfied?" Xie Jingxing's lips curled into a smile. "Are you proud?" Shen Miao's brows were dignified. This official's daughter is a Mingqi person and Prince Rui is a great Liang person. Well water does not interfere with river water, so why would there be glory? Xie Jingxing picked up the mask on the table and wore it again. The silver mask fitted his facial features very well, and not only did it not cover up his brilliance, it made his mysterious temperament even more bewitching. "When you kissed me, what you said was not this sentence." His eyes were more moving than the autumn moon outside as it flowed over Shen Miao's body. "Did you not say that I am your person?" Shen Miao refused to admit it to death. Prince Rui had misremembered. "In the future I will help you remember." Xie Jingxing stood up and a corner of his purple robe brushed across the table, messing up that game of chess. He said, "I will come and see you next time, Shen." "Jiao Jiao." "Shen Miao." Xie Jingxing flew out of the window. Shen Miao looked at his back and thought that after tomorrow, she must ask Shen Qiu to arrange for a few more guards at the courtyard doors. In any case, there were quite a number of experts living in this residence. Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu were people who had been in the army before, so how could they not be alert at all? It was really a joke to allow one to come and go freely in the residence. Outside the window, there was a purple-clad male walking along the streets of the Shen mansion. At the third watch of the night, there was no one on the streets and there was only this male and the guard behind him, with their long shadows swaying under the moonlight. Even the moonlight could not cover up the brilliance and the silver mask was shining brightly. That guard behind him said, "Master's mood seems to be good." He said that he was seeing an old friend, but after entering the Shen mansion and coming out, his lips were raised from the beginning to the end. One did not know what happy event had he heard to be this happy. The youth swept a glance at the guard. The golden threads on his sleeves were faintly discernible, and the embroidered clothes in the night made him look heroic. His eyes seemed to be smiling yet not smiling and his voice was as pleasant as the spring breeze. Naturally, it is good to see an interesting person. Chapter 476. On the second day, Shen Miao woke up late. Xie Jingxing only came yesterday in the middle of the night and after speaking to him, he was already very tired and slept the entire night without any dreams. When he woke up, it was already very late. Shen Miao rarely got up to be lazy and Luo Shuiyan thought that she was tired from the tribute banquet yesterday. Thus she let people specially prepare food for Shen Miao to eat after she woke up. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan went to the Ministry of War early in the morning. They had just been reinstated, and there were many old matters that needed to be settled. Shen Qiu and Luoling were not in the room and because Luoling was looking for a new job, Shen Xian simply let Luoling help Shen Qiu, so that those people would not bully Luoling for being a newcomer. As such, in this brand new Shen mansion, there was only Luotan and Shen Miao. Coincidentally, Feng and Ning sent an invitation to Shen Miao and wanted Shen Miao to accompany her to pick some jewelry. Shen Miao let Luotan go and assigned a few guards from the Shen residence to Luotan, saying that she was tired today and wanted to rest in the residence for a day. Luotan did not say anything else and only left after exhorting Shen Miao. After Luotan left, Shen Miao let Emoqing send a letter to Guangwen Tang and Emoqing complied before leaving. After 2 years there were some changes in the Ding capital. For example, the once popular and bustling Bao Xiang Lu, young lady Luing, was finally redeemed by that infatuated gentleman Mo for a high price of 1,000 taels of gold. Without a young lady Luing, the long-lost double-sided embroidery quietly appeared in the Ding capital and one piece of embroidered silk could be sold for 100 taels of silver. One heard that the embroidery lady not only had outstanding skills but was also beautiful. That embroidery shop also made a lot of money. If one changed their way of living, it might not be worse. No one knew what the new hope was after taking that step. Luing was living so well that the people who were worried about her would naturally be happy. Pei Lang was a trustworthy person, and the moment Shen Miao saw Pei Lang at the tribute banquet, she had an idea in her heart. Pei Lang had already obtained Fu Xiuyi's trust, thus Fu Xiuyi would bring Pei Lang by his side. Even though Fu Xiuyi was suspicious, it was only after he became the ruler. In all fairness, the current Fu Xiuyi still appreciated and cherished talented people. Pei Lang was a person with a ravine in his chest, and Fu Xiuyi would definitely think of ways to keep Pei Lang by his side. Because of this, now that Fu Xiuyi had tested Pei Lang's talent, he should also test Pei Lang's loyalty. She could not rashly go to see Pei Lang, lest Fu Xiuyi became suspicious. This pawn had not even crossed the boundary between Chu and Han. She said, "Take out a cloak." Bai Lu and Shuangjiang were tidying up the room when they heard the question, "Is young lady going out?" Shen Miao said, "There are some matters that need to be done." Bai Lu and Shuangjiang no longer spoke. Guyu quietly went forward to comb Shen Miao's hair while Jingzhe went to look for the cloak. Imperceptibly, Shen Miao's few maids immediately obeyed her orders. If someone saw this, they would definitely be surprised. Even the maids trained in the palace would not be so agile and calm. After leaving the residence, Emoqing went to Guangwen Tang and Shan Miao called Qi. Shen Miao was now much closer to Shan Qiu's subordinates. Initially, when they were in the northwest region, Shen Miao gave Shan Qiu a number of ideas on the art of war, and these were naturally what she had heard from Fu Xiuyi's aides. It was just following the gourd, but in other people's eyes, they felt that Shen Miao was a brilliant strategist and had the talent to be a general. Those soldiers were all uncouth men, but they also admired Shen Miao's brain and were more respectful towards her. Shen Miao said to Qi, "Do not tell others about going out today." Qi's heart quivered. He was originally loyal to Shan Qiu, and at this moment he felt the pressure under Shan Miao's clear eyes as he nodded his head. Yes. Chapter 477. Qi found an ordinary carriage for Shan Miao. This carriage was not eye-catching, and no one would recognize that it was the Shen family's carriage. There was no other reason than that Shan Miao had offended Princess Ming'an from the Qin country yesterday, and Princess Ming'an and Huangfu Hao were staying in the Yanqing alley that was not far from here. If one were to bump into them, it would be bad if Princess Ming'an found trouble with Shan Miao. This princess was very arrogant and willful. There were many guards in the Qin country, and if anything were to happen, it would be too late for Shen Xian and wife to rush over with their men. However, Qi was still very puzzled. After leaving the Ding capital for 2 years, if there was anyone in the Ding capital who had a friendship with Shen Miao, it would be the eldest young lady of the Feng residence, Feng and Ning. But today, when Shen Miao rejected Feng and Ning's invitation, it was obvious that she was not going to see Feng and Ning. Qi's thoughts ran wild. He thought of the stories that Luotan had told Luo Qian in the past at the Luo family, and his heart quivered. If it was really a play of a gentleman and a beauty being intimate, Qi had to tell Shen Qiu about it, even if he had to risk his life. It wasn't easy for their Shen family to produce such a talented and beautiful young lady. How could she be abducted by some wild boy who came out of nowhere? But he had never thought that the place Shen Miao wanted to go to was the Fengxian pawn shop. The Fengxian pawn shop was still the same as 2 years ago. It was still deserted. After all, not everyone had treasures that could be pawned here. Shen Miao got off the carriage and Qi followed closely behind. Jingzhe and Guyu also jumped down. Before Achi had time to size her up, he saw that Shen Miao had already walked towards the pawn shop. The waiter, who was still wiping the dust on the table with a handkerchief, saw 4 people walking towards him. The person in the lead was wearing a cloak. She pulled down the hood of her cloak, revealing a delicate and pretty face. It was clear that she was a pampered girl from a wealthy family. Her entire body exuded a noble aura that no one dared to look down on. He smiled fawningly and said, "Miss, do you want to pawn something?" Shen Miao glanced at him. The pawnshop assistant had already changed and heard that after they went to the Shaochun city, the Fengxian pawnshop was closed for 2 years. It was only recently reopened, but one did not know if that Hongling young lady and Ji Yushu were still there. She said, "I'm looking for Hongling." The young waiter was surprised for a moment and carefully sized up Shen Miao again. Shen Miao looked at him calmly, and the young waiter paused for a moment before quickly saying, "May young lady wait for a moment?" He then turned and entered the back hall. A moment later, a red-clothed woman came, followed by the shop assistant from before. She was still wearing a red dress, and her appearance was quite charming. Compared to 2 years ago, she was even more charming. When she saw Shen Miao, her eyes congealed before suddenly smiling. "Long time no see. Young lady is more and more outstanding," making Hongling unable to open her eyes. These impudent and rude words were spoken by Hongling, but they did not seem cheap. Instead, there was an inexplicable sense of cheerfulness. Shen Miao nodded her head slightly. Hongling smiled again and said, "Same old rules. Young lady, follow me, but..." She pointed her jade finger at Achi and smiled tenderly. "This blockhead cannot follow us." Achi's character was lively and was not as cold as Mo Qing. Being pointed at by Hongling, such a flirtatious lady boss, his face turned red. But he still insisted, "This subordinate will follow young lady. You wait here." Shen Miao said, "I am going to see a friend. Jingzhe and Guyu will follow." Her tone was firm and Achi could not say anything to refute. It was Hongling who saw this. A strange look flashed in her eyes. Most likely she did not expect that Shen Miao, such a delicate little person, would be able to teach the guards that she brought over a lesson so obediently. Moreover, no matter if it was Mo Qing or Achi, they all respected Shen Miao from the bottom of their hearts. A capable subordinate would more or less have some arrogance, but in front of Shen Miao, these people did not have any arrogance at all. Chapter 478. Shen Miao was a capable person. Hongling brought Shen Miao to Lin Jiangxian's small building. Jingzhe and Guyu followed behind as Shen Miao asked, "One heard that the Fengxian pawnshop reopened not long ago. 2 years ago. 2 years ago there was a change in the shopkeeper's family, and he closed the shop and returned to his hometown. Not long ago he returned to the Ding capital." Hongling smiled and took over the conversation. "Speaking of which, young lady is the first regular customer that our pawnshop has met." Shen Miao calculated in her heart before agreeing with a smile. When they arrived at the small building, just like before, Hongling placed her in an elegant room and said, "Hongling will go and call the innkeeper right now. Miss, please sit here and have some tea. Please wait for a moment." After saying that, she left. There were plums and tea on the table and the fragrance of incense curled up. This elegant room was exactly the same as before. Such a big shop like the Fengxian pawnshop that did not do business for 2 years was actually just left like that and not rented to others. It really had the appearance of a wealthy landlord. Shen Miao had not finished her cup of tea when there was the sound of someone pushing the door open. She put down the teacup and saw a person wearing an emerald green robe with a golden crown on his head walking in with a smile. This person still had a baby face, but after all, because of the 2 years of experience, he showed a bit of youthful maturity. It was just that the mischievous look on his face was as before. But Shen Miao looked at him. Ji Yushu was able to wear such gaudy clothes so happily. This person was really coquettish in his bones. When Ji Yushu pushed the door open and saw Shen Miao, his eyes brightened and did not hide it at all as he praised. Originally thought that young lady Xiao Yao was the most beautiful young lady that this one had seen, but now it seems that Shen young lady is not much inferior. Not seen for 2 years, Shen young lady has become even more elegant that this one is unable to find words to praise young lady. When Jingzhe and Guyu saw it, there was a look of displeasure on their faces. Ji Yushu's words were like that of a lecher who molested good young females. But these kinds of nonsense were matched with an innocent face, which made one confused if he was deliberately pretending to be stupid or if he was just saying it unintentionally. Shen Miao smiled gently. Manager Ji is also wealthier than before. Her eyes swept across Ji Yushu's gaudy clothes. Ji Yushu sat opposite Shen Miao and poured a cup of tea for himself. He looked very happy and seemed to be genuinely happy for the reunion. He said, "One did not expect that young Lady Shen would still remember this old friend of mine. One heard that General Shen had just returned to the capital and young Lady Shen was not in a hurry to see others but came to the Fengxian pawn shop. It seems that you really regard this one as a trustworthy person. I am very touched." Shen Miao. Last night there was just a person who thought that he was in love, and now there was another one in front of her. Shen Miao felt a headache coming on. Moreover, Ji Yushu said it in all seriousness. He really thought that Shen Miao was this close to him. Shen Miao coughed lightly. Actually, one came here today to do business with Manager Ji. Just returned to the Ding capital and there are many things that one is not clear about, thus one need to rely on Bai Xiaosheng. Ji Yushu was first startled before saying, "Do business? No problem. Whatever young Lady Shen wants to know, Bai Xiaosheng will do his best. As for the money, since this one and young Lady Shen are friends, one will give young Lady Shen a discount of 20%. Jingzhe and Guyu rolled their eyes at the back. Ji Yushu was in charge of such a big family business and on the surface it was a pawn shop but in fact it was a business without capital. Once a business turned into a steady stream of money, he was actually so stingy to only reduce 20%? Indeed, there was no businessman without ulterior motives. Shen Miao smiled gently. Money is easy to discuss but this time the news is not easy to handle. Ji Yushu said. Young Lady Shen really know how to joke. Initially my Fengxian pawn shop even accepted the business of creating news, so what is there to not accept now? Chapter 479. But Manager Ji has not been in Mingqi for 2 years. One fear that it would be troublesome to inquire about Mingqi's matters. She said. Ji Yushu smiled and there was an indescribable pride in his eyes. Shen young lady must not underestimate the Fengxian pawn shop. Even though this one was not in the Ding capital for 2 years and the Fengxian pawn shop was closed, but the business still needs to be done. Otherwise, where would the money come from to support the family? Bai Xiaosheng is still doing it. After all, 2 years of harvest cannot be thrown away in vain. Shen young lady finished speaking. What news do you want to inquire about? My Fengxian pawn shop will naturally serve young lady. Shen Miao chuckled. Since Manager Ji said so, I am assured. Today one is here to do 3 business deals and all of them are to buy news. First, does Manager Ji know about the death of the little Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and 2 years ago? Ji Yushu was surprised for a moment and looked at Shen Miao. Why is Shen young lady inquiring about this? The Xie family and my Shen family are after all Mingqi's military family. Even though the Marquis of Lin and my father do not have the same political views, but martial artists appreciate each other. As the saying goes, the fox grieves when the rabbit dies. The little Marquis of Xie's generation was a talent but died tragically on the battlefield. Thus one feel pity in one's heart. One would like to ask Manager Ji to help me to inquire about the clues of the little Marquis death, including the matter of keeping it in. Ji Yushu drank a mouthful of tea and smiled. This is easy to handle. It is just that the matter of Xie Jingxing's death is known to everyone, so it is not easy to inquire about different things. This one cannot guarantee that one would be able to inquire about it. After all, the lamp goes out after a person dies and it has been too long. Manager Ji just have to do things diligently. If one really cannot find it, it is also alright with me. Shen Miao picked up the teapot and poured herself a cup of tea before speaking lightly. The second business deal. Does Manager Ji know that there is an imperial physician in the Mingqi's palace called Gao Yang? With a pew sound, Ji Yushu spurted out a mouthful of tea. Shen Miao gave Jingzhe a look and Jingzhe quickly handed over a handkerchief. Ji Yushu took the handkerchief and wiped the water stains on his body in a flurry before hearing Shen Miao saying, Manager Ji seems to be very surprised? Ji Yushu said, indeed somewhat surprised. Why would Shen young lady think of looking for the imperial physician in the palace? I was entrusted by someone. Shen Miao looked at him. Shopkeeper Ji, have you never heard of this name? Gao Yang shook his head. This is the first time hearing about it. It seems that her medical skills are not that good, otherwise she would have been famous throughout the world. He looked at Shen Miao and said with some difficulty, "To be honest with you, how would young lady be involved with the palace? Although Bai Shaoxing is doing business, there are too many forces involved in the palace. It's not good for us businessmen to take risks." Shen Miao looked at him and did not speak, but her calm eyes made Ji Yushu somewhat uneasy. Ji Yushu coughed twice and inexplicably his voice became softer. "It is not that it is not possible, but one need to add more money. Manager Ji need not worry about money." Shen Miao smiled. Manager Ji will not be short of it. After Shen Miao's first 2 deals, Ji Yushu was already short of breath with a guilty conscience and laughed dryly twice. "One do not know what is the third news that Shen young lady wants to buy about? The third deal is somewhat difficult." Shen Miao looked at him. "But I believe that with Manager Ji's ability, it is only a matter of time." When Ji Yushu heard it, he forced a smile. "Many thanks to Shen young lady's trust, but what is it that can make Shen young lady feel difficult?" "I want to inquire about a person." Shen Miao put down the teacup. "His Highness Prince Rui of the Great Liang." Ji Yushu's hand that was holding the teacup trembled slightly, but his face had an unfathomable expression. "Oh? Why would Shen young lady think of inquiring about His Highness Prince Rui? According to this one's knowledge, this His Highness Prince Rui just came to the Ding capital not long ago. Even if there is a friendship, at most Shen young lady would be able to see him at the tribute banquet. Could it be that Shen young lady is like those noble females and admire Prince Rui's beauty, so she specially came to inquire?" When Ji Yushu said till the end, one did not know why he became happy again. His voice changed from the depression earlier to a rare excitement. Chapter 480. Jingzhe and Guyu were about to explode from anger at the back. Ji Yushu's mouth was full of nonsense, and if it was heard by people outside, one did not know how they would think of Shen Miao. But when the master spoke, the servants could not interrupt. Thus both of them could only endure their anger and look at Ji Yushu in disdain. Shen Miao lightly looked at Ji Yushu's excited appearance of scratching his ears and cheeks and suddenly smiled. "Yes. I also admire his peerless beauty." Ji Yushu was surprised. He suddenly opened his mouth wide as he pointed at Shen Miao in disbelief and stammered, "These words are true?" Shen Miao nodded her head and said seriously, "Really?" Ji Yushu seemed to have discovered a great secret, and could not suppress his excited expression. He laughed twice and said, "Since that is the case, this one will definitely help young lady to inquire about Prince Rui's situation. See if there are other young ladies around him." Shen Miao got up and nodded her head at Ji Yushu. "Then many thanks to Manager Ji. If you find anything, trouble someone to send a letter to the residence, and I will naturally come to Fengxian Pawnshop to meet with Manager Ji." She took out a silver ingot from her sleeves and placed it in front of Ji Yushu. "This is the deposit." Ji Yushu smiled. "Shen young lady is too polite. There is no need to talk about deposit between you and me." As he spoke, he kept the silver ingot into his sleeves. Jingzhe and Guyu rolled their eyes at him a few more times. Shen Miao smiled. "It is a matter of course to take money to do things. It is just that Manager Ji needs to remember one point." Her eyes were gentle, but the words that she said had a bit of sharpness. Bai Shaoxing's rule of doing business is that goods are genuine at fair prices. Since one came to Manager Ji to inquire about information, naturally one would not wish to hear fake information. The information must be true, and it is best if it is useful to me. Otherwise one would have spent the money but obtained useless information. Shen Miao lowered her head and smiled. It would be bad if Manager Ji's reputation was ruined, and the business could not continue. Ji Yushu was surprised for a moment when Shen Miao had already called Jingzhe and Guyu out. He was stunned for a moment and heard Hongling sending Shen Miao off with a smile. He looked at the teacup in front of him and suddenly sneezed. He rubbed his nose and stood up before pushing the door to the neighboring room. He pulled open a landscape painting in front of him, and behind it was a door. Ji Yushu opened the door and just walked in when he was kicked by someone and almost fell down. As soon as he closed the door, he angrily shouted at the instigator, "Gao Yang." The person sitting behind the door was in fluttering white robes and had a sage-like demeanor. He was waving his folding fan and had a cultured and elegant appearance. But the words that he said were not polite. Ji Yushu, is there something wrong with your brain? If you carry on like this, you would not even know if you are sold as a fool. Ji Yushu said angrily, you are smart. You are smart, but others still found out the clues. He said he wanted to see Imperial Physician Gao. Shut up. The person in the corner finally couldn't help but speak. Who else could it be other than Xie Jingxing, who was dressed in a luxurious purple robe? He swept a glance at Ji Yushu noisy. Ji Yushu felt wronged and said, Third older brother, I do not know anything. I left the capital with you and just returned when others found out that something was wrong. This is clearly Gao Yang's fault. Ji Yushu looked at Gao Yang fiercely. Speak. Is there something wrong with you that was seen by Xin young lady? This elegant room was adjacent to the previous elegant room. Thus one could clearly hear the conversation between Ji Yushu and Shan Miao. Both of their conversation was heard by Xie Jingxing and Gao Yang. One knew that the three people that Xin Miao inquired about were all here, so it was strange to think about it. Ji Yushu, are you stupid? Gao Yang said. Xin Miao only returned to the Ding capital a few days ago. Unless she has clairvoyance, how would she know what I did in the palace? I still suspect that there is a problem with you. Chapter 481. What problem do I have? Xin young lady did not inquire about me. Why would she inquire about you without any rhyme or reason? Could it be that she is fond of you? But Xin young lady does not admire third older brother's beauty? Ji Yushu thought of something and smiled mischievously. He he he. Xin young lady is also smitten by third older brother. Only a fool like you would believe this kind of nonsense. Gao Yang looked at him coldly. Do you think that everyone is like you who would be blinded by beauty? Ji Yushu patted his chest. I cannot win against you in words. I will not talk to you anymore. Third older brother, what to do now? Do you look for her? Or just randomly fabricate news to deceive her? Since Shen Miao inquired about these three news, she must have some understanding. If one were to deceive, one might be discovered. What was Shen Miao's intention? Now one really could not see the Shen family's position clearly. In these 2 years there was also that Pei Lang who had a private friendship with Shen Miao, and now he had become Fu Xiuyi's confidant. How could a young lady be so complicated? Gao Yang rambled on for a while and discovered that Xie Jingxing did not listen to his words at all and was looking at the teapot on the table, not knowing what he was thinking about, so he reminded Xie, Your Highness, how to deal with this time. Xie Jingxing recovered to his senses and thought about it. No need to deal with it. Why? Without waiting for Gao Yang to speak, Ji Yushu spoke first. Not earning money? Moreover, Xin young lady is exceptionally intelligent. If one were to really reject like this, she would definitely discover that something is wrong. What if it is discovered that there is something wrong with our Feng Xian pawn shop? Xie Jingxing smiled faintly. It is because she is intelligent that one need not deal with it. Your meaning is? Gao Yang's brows frowned. She discovered that something is not right and came over to probe. Xie Jingxing narrowed his eyes and his lips hooked up. Those words were not said for you to hear, but for me to hear. That peerless beauty? Ji Yushu's focus was always on other things. Xie Jingxing swept a cold glance at him and said, It was also said for me to hear. In the carriage outside, Jingzhe and Guyu carefully looked at Xin Miao's expression and Guyu softly said, Young lady, did that manager Ji say something wrong? The girl looks a little angry. She was indeed very angry. Even though Shan Miao looked calm on the surface, the coldness around her made the two maids feel it. He seemed to be sulking but also seemed to be angry. He was just suppressing his anger. Jingzhe and Guyu were very puzzled as they heard Shan Miao and Ji Yushu talking in the elegant room. Even though Ji Yushu's words were not pleasant to hear. But just now Shan Miao was still fine. Moreover, Shan Miao was not a person who would get angry because of words. Jingzhe and Guyu did not understand. Shan Miao lightly replied, Nothing. But her tone became colder. She clenched her fists tightly in her sleeves, but there was an uncontrollable stifling feeling in her heart. Didn't the Feng Xian pawn shop close down after she left and reopen not long before she returned to the capital? How could there be such a coincidence in the world? All the coincidences in the world could be traced. Xin Miao carefully thought about it. When the Feng Xian pawn shop closed, other than Shenxian going to the Shaochun city, there was another major event that happened, and that was Xie Jingxing requesting the commander to send out troops. As for the reopening of the Fengxian pawnshop, other than her returning to the capital, was it not coincidentally the Ming Qi's tribute, when the Crown Prince of Qin and Prince Ruwei arrived at the Ding capital? The Shen family and the Fengxian pawnshop did not have any relationship, so naturally it would not be related to the Shen family. Huang Fuhao was not in the Ding capital 2 years ago, so no matter how one thought about it, the closure and reopening of the shop had an indelible relationship with Xie Jingxing. Today she came to the Fengxian pawnshop to probe. The result of the probe was indeed as she expected. Ji Yushu and Xie Jingxing were old acquaintances, and it was the same for Gao Yang. Connecting everything, one feared that Ji Yushu and Gao Yang were great Liang's people, but had hidden their identities in the Ding capital. The most hateful thing was that when she did business with Ji Yushu, she revealed everything about Prince Yu residence, and one feared that Xie Jingxing already knew everything clearly. She thought that she had taken the initiative and had Ji Yushu firmly in her grasp, but in the end Xie Jingxing was the Oriole behind. Thinking of how Xie Jingxing played people like a fool, Shen Miao could not wait to tear Xie Jingxing apart. Her heart was stifled. When Jingzhe saw the situation, she thought that she was tired of the heat and opened the curtain to get some fresh air, but quickly put it down again. Shen Miao casually glanced and did not expect to see a familiar face in the crowd on the street. Jingzhe put down the curtain but was stopped by Shen Miao's shout to stop the carriage. She opened the curtain and looked towards the direction just now, but there was no longer that face in the crowd. Young lady. Jingzhe and Guyu were alarmed by Shen Miao's actions today, but they saw Shen Miao carefully looking outside the carriage for a while before putting down the curtain. Nothing much. Continue on. It was just that her brows were locked tightly and her expression was even more solemn than before. Chapter 482. Shen Xian and wife returned to the capital with such great fanfare, and Shen Miao was in the limelight in front of all the civil and military officials in Ming Qi's tribute banquet. At the same time everyone was talking about it, they also turned their eyes towards the original formidable general residence. The formidable great general was no longer there, and the signboard of the general residence had long been removed and replaced with the Shen residence. At the beginning, when Shen Xian was demoted and left the capital, the Shen family not only did not send charcoal in the snowy weather, but also proposed to separate at the crucial moment, to draw a clear relationship with Shen Xian. Now that Shen Xian was once again highly regarded by Emperor Wen Hui, no matter what Emperor Wen Hui's intention was, outsiders would see the Shen family as gloating, and as for the Shen family themselves, naturally they had to swallow the bitter fruit. In Rongjingtang, old Shen Foreign was sitting on the couch, and the fur on the couch was the wolf skin that was hunted in the northwest region when Shen Xian was still alive. Because it had been a long time, the edges were somewhat flat. In the past, every year when Shen Xian returned to the capital, he would bring some animal skins that were hunted in the northwest region for old Shen Foreign, and that was something that could not be bought in the capital. Now that Shen Xian no longer sent animal skins, old Shen Foreign could only use the old goods. And Rongjingtang was no longer as exquisite and luxurious as it was in the past, and even the decorations on the partitions were much lesser. In the beginning, Shen Xian was endlessly rewarded by the emperor, and even the entire Shen residence lived comfortably, but now without Shen Xian's help, Chan Roqiu was in charge of the housekeeping, and the days were somewhat stretched. Number 3's family is getting more and more excessive. Old Shen Foreign drank a mouthful of ginseng tea, and her face almost wrinkled together. She said, seeing that winter is coming, yesterday she went to find a tailor to make a fur cloak for me, but it was also pushing and pulling. This family's money is all in her own pocket. The maid behind carefully massaged old Shen Foreign's shoulders and lowered her head without speaking. Now old Shen Foreign's temper was becoming more and more temperamental. Ever since Shen Yuanbo died of smallpox a year ago, old Shen Foreign would often lose her temper. Shen Yuanbo's premature death was an unspeakable pain for the Shen family. A year ago, there were a number of people who were infected with smallpox in the Ding capital, and even though it was finally controlled, the spread of the epidemic was stopped and it did not cause a greater impact. But in the end there were still some who died, and unfortunately, Shen Yuanbo was one of them. In the second household of the Shen family, Shen Gui originally had 2 sons, and Shen Yuan had already died under the executioner's knife. Originally there was still Shen Yuanbo to rely on, but once Shen Yuanbo died, Shen Gui went crazy and Run Wanyun hung herself in the courtyard after Shen Yuanbo died. After Run Wanyun's death, Shen Yuanbo started to crazily take in concubines and bring women into the room, but there was no movement for a year and a half. Afterwards old Shen Foran finally felt that something was not right and found a physician to take a look at Shen Gui. The physician said that Shen Gui had taken an infertility medicine and injured the roots of his offspring, so it was impossible for him to have any offspring in this lifetime. Old Shen Foran fainted after hearing it, and Shen Gui was also silly. After Shen Gui investigated, he ended up finding the dead Ran Wanyun. Ran Wanyun had once drugged Shen Gui with the intention to protect Shen Yuanbo's D-Sun position, but who knew that Shen Yuanbo's life was destined to have such a calamity? With Ran Wanyun's death, naturally Shen Gui could not do anything to her. In the original second household, Shen Gui only had Shen Dongling left. Shen Dongling's status rose because of this, and Wan Yinyang changed and became the only person who gave birth to a child for Shen Gui. Ever since Shen Gui knew that he would not have any descendants in this lifetime, he no longer had the heart to advance in his career. There was not even a person to carry on the family line, so what was the point of earning a mountain of gold and silver? Spending the entire day in debauchery, it was very lively. It was impossible for the second household to give birth to any offspring. Thus old Shen Foran could only turn her gaze towards the third household, Shen Wan. Shen Wan was not forced to take the infertility medicine, but Chun Roqiu had trapped Shen Wan's heart to death. Even the two tongfang that old Shen Foran stuffed into Shen Wan in the early years were only decorations in the third household. Chapter 483. Old Shen Foran said, "Not only is the housekeeping a mess, she is also easily jealous. Saying that she is a noble young lady raised by a scholarly family, one do not know where did she learn the lowly ways of a small family and behave in a lowly manner. Not thinking of spreading branches and leaves for one's husband, and only know how to use foxy methods. Now that the third household does not have a D-Sun, one do not know what kind of intentions she has." Zhang Mama smiled. Old Foran need not be angry. Currently Third Master still does not know the good of other young ladies. Third Master is very affectionate, and after a few days when those newly bought young ladies arrive, Old Foran will send both of them to Third Master. They are all at the age of flowers and jade, so Third Master will naturally know the good of them. Old Shen Foran sent people to buy Yangzhou skinny horses. For a person like Shen Wan, one feared that an empty beauty would not be able to win over Shen Wan's heart. Chun Roqiu also relied on her poetic and picturesque skills to make Shen Wan look at her in a different light. Those Yangzhou skinny horses were trained since young and were proficient in the four arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Their looks were top-notch, and there was no male that did not love them. Old Shen Foran did not believe that Shen Wan was after all a man and would not be greedy. No matter how good Chun Roqiu was, she was also old. "All of them make me angry," Old Shen Foran said unhappily. One do not know where did Sister Cho learn to be like her mother, to have a very high attitude. She had mentioned so many families and all of them were wealthy and well off, but she did not fancy any of them. Could it be that she still wants to marry a prince? Zhang Mama frowned. Old Shen Foran's habit of speaking without any filter had not changed at all. She smiled apologetically. Second young lady is born well, and one fear that Third Master also have a decision in his heart and want to keep second young lady in a good family. Staying will become enmity. Old Shen Foran snorted coldly. Just wait and see. I want to see what kind of marriage Third Master's family can find for Sister Chiu. In Chiu Shui Yuan, Chun Roqiu pressed her forehead. Her personal maid Shi Qing said, "Madam, your servant has gone to Rongjingtang to inquire. Lao Fu really did find several thin Yangzhou horses for San Laoi, and in a few days they will be delivered to the mansion." "Madam, old madam is slapping your face." Chun Roqiu closed her eyes and fiercely swept all the books on the table onto the floor. A series of pai li pa la sounds shocked the maids in the room, and they did not dare to make a sound. Even though Chun Roqiu was still as gentle and considerate as before in front of Shen Wan, but the servants could clearly feel that third foreign Chun Roqiu's temper had become fiercer in these 2 years. Most likely it was because she was in charge of the public finances and needed to balance the money between the various households, and old Shen Foran liked to be extravagant, so Chun Roqiu did not reduce her own money. In the past, she didn't need to eat the food of the mortal world. so she could naturally live a life of self-cultivation. Now that she was entangled with worldly affairs, she felt that every day was a mess. Of course, the most important thing was that he had no children. She said coldly, this old fart buying a skinny horse for his son. He really has no sense of shame. If Shen Wan was present, his jaw would probably drop. The gentle and graceful person, whose voice was always like a gentle breeze in drizzling rain, actually spoke so harshly. Huai said, Madam's temper is too good. If this goes on, sooner or later old foreign will stuff people into master's room. Chen Roqiu took a breath and turned to look at the two maids, Shi Qing and Hua Yi. These were the personal maids that she had promoted, and now they were at the right age of 18 or 19. They were like plum fruits and had a honey-like aura from head to toe. This kind of dainty beauty. Her lips hooked up and said, Old foreign is really muddle-headed. If she really wants to stuff women into our courtyard, why go outside to look for those dirty people? One's background is not clear and one is not afraid of spoiling the family's reputation. It is better to find some clean and obedient ones from the side. One can be at ease when using them and also feel comfortable when serving. I look at both of you and think that it is not bad. Chapter 484. Although her words were gentle, her eyes were very sharp. The two maids jumped in fright and quickly knelt down, saying, We don't dare. We only want to serve Madam wholeheartedly. We don't dare to have any other thoughts. Chen Roqiu looked down at them for a while, and the two maids were so scared that their legs were trembling. She then lightly said, Get up. Since you are not willing, I will not force you. Many thanks to foreign. The two maids trembled as they stood up and their hearts sighed in relief at the same time. Chen Roqiu looked gentle on the outside and treated people kindly, but as Chen Roqiu's personal maids, they had seen Chen Roqiu's methods. In fact, there were a few good-looking maids that rushed to stick to Shen Wan. Even though Shen Wan did not show much interest, he did not reject them too much. These few maids were later punished by Chen Roqiu with a reason. Not only did they decline, they also implicated the entire family. Shi Qing and Hua Yi were very clear in their hearts that Chen Roqiu was an extremely jealous person and her methods were ruthless. If one really had a relationship with Shen Wan, one feared that one would die until not even bones would be left. Chen Roqiu sighed. One can only blame me for not having the ability to give birth to a son for master. If I was able to give birth to a son, it would not be such a situation now. Shi Qing and Hua Yi did not dare to speak casually. After all, children were the pain in Chen Roqiu's heart. Chen Roqiu muttered, Now that the Shen residence has declined to such a state, there is not even a son among the younger generation. Even if there was one in the second household, they are all dead now. Now I am envious of Luo Shuiyan. She has children but no parents-in-law. Shen Xian treats her like a jewel and does not even have a Tong Fong. It really makes one jealous. Thinking of yesterday at the tribute banquet, Shen Miao was in the limelight. Looking at Shen Yu again, it was obvious that her looks and talents were much higher than Shen Miao, but because of the declining reputation of the Shen family, she could not even find a good husband. Not to mention Shen Yu's yearning for Prince Ding. There was a trace of unwillingness in Chen Roqiu's heart. She had been competitive all her life, but now she was trampled by the vulgar daughter of a military general that she looked down upon. At this moment, an old maid suddenly came in from outside and said, Madam, someone is looking for old Madam outside the mansion's entrance, but was stopped by Madam's servant. He said that he came to seek refuge with the Shen family. When Chen Roqiu heard it, she frowned and thought that it was old Shen foreign's relatives who were unrelated to her that came over. The Jing clan was gone, but there were still these strange people. His expression immediately turned cold and he said, Since you're here to ask for money, give them 2 silver ingots and send them away. This mansion can't afford to have idle people. Don't let any Tom, Dick or Harry in. No. The manservant scratched his head and said, Madam, that person doesn't look like she's here to take advantage of us. She said that she's the daughter of an old friend of the general. Something happened to her family and she's desperate to seek help. Old General Shen? Chen Roqiu thought for a moment before standing up and said, Bring her to the side room. I will go and meet her. When Shen Miao returned to the residence from Fengxian pawn shop, it was still very early. When she entered the room, She locked herself in and one did not know what she was thinking about. When it was close to evening, Luotan returned. Luotan bought some jewelry and generously gave some to Shen Miao, Biao youngest sister. Today we went to the jeweler shops. The jeweler shops in the Ding capital are very big. Young lady Feng and I also picked some for you. One do not know if you like it. You take it first and later when you want to go out we can go shopping again. She actually had a look of wanting to continue. Shen Miao turned her head and said yes. After Luotan left, she looked at the half box of jewelry and thought about how much money could be pawned. Chapter 485. Shen Xian and entourage came back not long after Luotan and everyone ate dinner together. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan seemed to be in a good mood, probably because the matters in the officialdom were very smooth. Only Shen Miao seemed to be slightly embarrassed. Luo Ling noticed it and said, "Younger Biao sister looks somewhat unwell. What happened?" Shen Qiu put down his chopsticks. "Sister, what's wrong?" Shen Miao was surprised for a moment, and when she saw everyone at the table staring at her, she smiled. "Nothing much. It is just that one had just returned to the capital from the Shaochun city, and feels somewhat not used to it. Just stay for a few days." Shen Qiu smiled and said, "What's there to not be used to? If little sister isn't used to it, I can bring little sister to stroll from the east to the west of the city, and from the south to the north when I'm free in a few days. Little sister will get used to it after walking a few more times." "Cousin Qiu, bring me along too," Luotan hurriedly said. "I can also protect little cousin sister." "Nonsense," Luo Shuiyan said. "If your younger sister really go around the Ding capital with you, one fear that she would be exhausted. The Ding capital is so big, what if something happens?" She glared at Shen Xian, wanting Shen Xian to help. Shen Xian laughed and said, "It's fine as long as the children are happy. Brat, if you are going to bring your younger sisters out to play, then bring your father's troops along. Whoever dares to cause trouble, beat them to death. Don't be afraid." Luo Shuiyan was so angry that she pinched him. The husband and wife quarreled with each other, but they seemed to be very close. Shen Xian was awe-inspiring outside, but when he returned home, he listened to Luo Shuiyan's every word. Shen Miao was originally smiling as she watched, but as she watched, one did not know what she was thinking about and her expression gradually turned gloomy. She quickly lowered her head so that the surrounding people would not notice that there was something wrong with her expression. Luo Ling, who was beside her paying attention to her every move, paused slightly and lowered his head thoughtfully. After the meal, they chatted for a while in the hall before going back to their respective rooms. Shen Miao prepared to return to her own courtyard as Luotan's courtyard was in front of Shen Miao, so she skipped back to her room first. When they reached Shen Miao's courtyard, Shen Miao prepared to enter but was stopped by Luo Ling. "Cousin, wait." Shen Miao turned her head and looked at him. "What is the matter with older brother Ling?" Luo Ling hesitated for a moment before finally taking out a square thing from his sleeves. He said warmly, "When I went out with my cousin today, I happened to see a shop selling this outside. I saw that there were quite a lot of people buying it, so I bought one. I heard that cousin sister often dreams at night. This thing has been soaked in spices and has the effect of concentrating. If cousin sister doesn't mind, please accept it." Shen Miao was slightly surprised and looked up at the young man in front of her. Luo Ling was born with good looks. Even though he could not be compared to Shen Qiu's bravery and was not as handsome as Xie Jingxing, and even Ji Yushu looked more delicate and cute than him, but that kind of warmth that came from the heart made one feel comfortable. Among the younger generation of the Luo family, Luo Ling was the most outstanding one. Not only was he the most steady, but he was able to shoulder the heavy responsibility of the family and was sincere. In the night, one seemed to be able to see Luo Ling's slightly red face. He said uncomfortably, "If my cousin doesn't like it." Shen Miao took the things from Luo Ling's hands lightly and smiled. "How can I bear to reject older Biao brother's kind intentions?" "Thank you, older Biao brother." Luo Ling smiled gently. "It is good that you like it." His eyes were gentle and his words were filled with concern. It was a very comfortable attitude, and if it was an ordinary female, not to say that they were tempted, they would have a very good impression of the person in front. But Shen Miao took a step back and looked at him. "If there is nothing else, I will return to the room first." There was a flash of disappointment in Luo Ling's eyes, but he quickly covered it up. One will not disturb younger Biao sister. He turned and left. Chapter 486. Shen Miao looked at Luo Ling's back as he left and quietly watched for a while. She was not an inexperienced young female who did not know about matters. Even if she did not enjoy the tenderness and honeyed feelings between men and women with Fu Xiuyi, she had after all stayed in the palace for so many years. Luo Ling was a good person and she was too selfish to pull such a good person into her life that was filled with schemes and schemes. Even though Luo Ling was a very good person, the Luo family treated her well, thus she could not repay kindness with enmity. She turned around and returned to her own room. After washing up, Jingzhe and Guyu withdrew and Shen Miao sat in front of the table and spread out the things that Luo Ling gave her. It was a handkerchief and coincidentally, it was a double-sided embroidered handkerchief. In the Ding capital, the handkerchief embroidered on the top was the most difficult to find and one thought that Luo Ling had spent a lot of money to buy this handkerchief. There was a white crane embroidered on it, and it was in line with his character that had no desires and it emitted a faint fragrance that made one's mind feel at ease. Shen Miao looked at it for a long time. The lines on the handkerchief were obviously from Lu Ying's hands. Lu Ying's craftsmanship was one of the best in the Ding capital, and in addition this was a double-sided embroidery that was rarely seen in Mingqi. It seemed that Lu Ying was living well. As Shen Miao looked at it, her depressed mood became better because of the person that she met in the rain today. She felt somewhat tired, so she took off her outer robe and only wore her inner clothes. She walked to the couch and sat down. Just as she was about to take off her inner clothes to rest, she heard a light laugh. Wait. Shen Miao's hands paused, and when she turned her head back, her raging anger could not be concealed at all. She looked at a certain person who came in uninvited and said word by word, Xia. Jing. Xing. That person entered the room and closed the window, leisurely and contented as if it was his own backyard. This time he did not wear a mask and a handsome and beautiful face was exposed under the light, making one's life seductive, but Shen Miao only wanted to drag him out and behead him. Under the heavens, only you can call me Xiao Zi. Xie Jingxing casually pulled a chair over and sat down not far from Shen Miao's couch. He smiled lightly. In the world, there is only you who have this honor. He was tall, and when he sat down he was actually taller than Shen Miao by quite a bit. He really didn't want to relax his imposing manner at all. Shen Miao looked at him coldly. Prince Rui is very idle every day, and is very familiar with the route from Yanqing Lane to here. It's simple. Xie Jingxing propped up his chin. I have bought all the residences from Yanqing Lane to here. Now the residence that you are staying in next to is also my courtyard. Since we are distant relatives and good neighbors, this prince came to pay a visit. Shen Miao sucked in a breath of cold air. Even though the Yanqing Lane was close to the Shen mansion, there was still some distance. Xie Jingxing bought all the residences from the Yanqing Lane to the Shen mansion. Didn't that mean that more than half of the southern part of the city was his own courtyard? The courtyard next to the Shen mansion was also bought by Xie Jingxing. Even if Xie Jingxing had money, he would not spend it like this. Did he bring the treasury of the Great Liang with him? He squandered money like dirt. Did Emperor Yonglu of the Great Liang know about it? When she saw the smile on Xie Jingxing's face, Shen Miao was so angry. Xie Jingxing was so shameless to say that he was distant relatives and good neighbors, but who would choose to visit their neighbors in the middle of the night? Without an invitation, he came uninvited. Was the imperial family of the Great Liang so unruly? You do not look very happy. Xie Jingxing looked at her with interest. If there is any difficulty, you can tell older brother. Prince Rui's identity can still help on account of old acquaintance. Shen Miao rolled her eyes at him. She was getting more and more unclear of what Xie Jingxing wanted to do. Xie Jingxing's words reminded her. Thinking of the words that she said to Ji Yushu at the Fengxian pawn shop, Shen Miao suddenly had some thoughts and deliberately asked, Xie Jingxing, what do you think about Madame Feng of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage? Chapter 487. Madame Feng of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage was Xie Chongwu's and Xie Chongchao's birth mother. At that time Princess Yuqing's death was more or less related to Madame Feng. Everyone knew that Princess Yuqing was something that Xie Jingxing could not mention, but Shen Miao mentioned it. Xie Jingxing looked at her with a faint smile. Do you want to trick me? Will you tell me? There is no harm in telling you. Xie Jingxing lazily said. In my eyes, you are worse than an ant. Shen Miao looked at him. Why did you not kill her for revenge? Xie Jingxing narrowed his eyes and stared at Shan Miao for a while before suddenly laughing. His voice was like the peach blossom wine that was buried in the spring and dug out in the winter. It was mellow like the spring breeze that made one intoxicated, but also like the biting cold of winter that made one awake. He said, Shen Miao, are you worried that Shen Xine will become the second Xie Ding? Shen Miao's eyes hung down, correct? After a pause she said, if I was in your position, I would think of all ways to take revenge. Only by killing Madame Fong and then killing her 2 sons will I be able to take revenge. Only then will I not have lived in vain. She said it coldly, as if she didn't feel how ruthless her words were. When Xie Jingxing heard this, he wasn't surprised and only laughed, as if he was laughing at her naivety. Xie Jingxing said, not killing Madame Fong is because of disdain and fear of trouble. Xie Ding and Princess Yu Qing have nothing to do with me, so why should I take revenge? Shen Miao was surprised. Xie Ding and Xie Jingxing were not father and son. Shen Miao heard it from Xie Jingxing before and did not feel surprised. But how come Princess Yu Qing did not have any relationship with Xie Jingxing? The blood flowing in Xie Jingxing's body did not belong to Xie Ding and Princess Yu Qing. So how did he become the D son of the Xie family? Shen Miao's heart moved as she thought of something and asked Xie Jingxing. Then Princess Yu Qing's son, dead? Xie Jingxing said plainly. He died when he was born. He had died when he was born, but after that there was no news of him at all. It seemed that Xie Jingxing had already been stuffed over at that time, and no one found out about it. Princess Yu Qing herself might not even know about it. If Xie Ding's son was alive, he would not live past the age of 3 before dying. Xie Jingxing said indifferently, because of me, Madame Fong did not dare to do it. Because his smile was somewhat sinister. The people who were sent here would mysteriously disappear. Shen Miao was suddenly enlightened. She had said before that Madame Fong was able to force Princess Yu Qing into such a sorry state and even withered like a flower at the end. She must be someone with means and ambition. How would such a person be able to live in seclusion and live so peacefully and even let Xie Jingxing grow up safe and sound? As it turned out, it was a bad plan. The people they sent out would always mysteriously disappear. Madame Fong herself probably felt that it was strange, so she settled for the next best thing. As for why those people would disappear, since Xie Jingxing was Prince Rui of the Liang dynasty, there would be capable people around him. It should be more than enough to deal with Madame Fong. Some of the things that she didn't understand before suddenly became clear, and she forgot about those annoying things from before. Xie Jingxing looked down at her and said, you need not worry. Shen Xine and Xie Ding are different. Shen Miao said, I am also different from you. Xie Jingxing was slightly startled and heard Shen Miao saying, you are disdainful and there is no need. But I am different. If there is someone like Madame Fong who shakes my family, I will spare no effort to make her suffer the consequences of her own actions. If there is someone like Madame Fong who harbors evil intentions and attempts to destroy it, I will tear her to pieces inside and out and drag her to a mass grave to feed the dogs. Finishing her words, she lowered her head, but her eyes were filled with other emotions. But she felt her head sink as Xie Jingxing's hand pressed on her head and said, if there is such a person, just tell me. Distant relatives and good neighbors, I will kill him for you and not leave any future troubles. Shen Miao shook off his hand and Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile. His expression was undisciplined and his words had a joking tone, as if he was saying it casually, but his pair of eyes seemed to be serious. If Xie Jingxing wanted to kill someone, it was indeed an easy matter to kill someone of Madame Fong's level. Shen Miao said, I can also do this kind of thing like killing. It is not a good move to take action yourself until the last moment. Xie Jingxing said, if you really feel apologetic, it is all right to give me something as a reward. Shen Miao said sarcastically, Your Highness Prince Rui is a precious gold and jade. I cannot afford to pay for an invitation. Xie Jingxing smiled. I will give you 20%. He stood up and walked to the front of the table. Just now Shan Miao had spread out the handkerchief that Luo Ling gave her. Xie Jingxing casually picked it up and sniffed it before raising his eyebrows. Even though the fragrance is poor, this prince's dogs have not been sleeping well recently. It is not bad to make do with it. Not waiting for Shan Miao to speak, Xie Jingxing kept the handkerchief into his sleeves. This is considered as a reward. Chapter 488. After the tribute banquet, the Ding capital was still lively. Because of welcoming the nobles from the great Liang and Qin country, the streets were much more bustling than usual. No matter when, the imperial family of Mingqi hoped to be able to have a flourishing appearance in front of other countries. In the Shun residence, the servants in Qiu Shui Yuan were talking about a new topic. What is the background of the new young lady in the residence? Is it worth third foreign to treat her in such a good manner? This year's new tea leaves were first brewed for that young lady. Could it be a noble person in the residence? An old woman wearing a green gown whispered, heard that this young lady's father and old general were very close in the past, and at that time even blocked a knife for old general and almost lost his life. A young maid quickly covered her mouth and said in surprise, no wonder. Being benevolent to old general is the same as being benevolent to the Shen family. No wonder she is treated as a guest of honor. It is said that she is here to seek shelter. Most likely something happened in the family. Looking at third foreign's appearance, it seems that she wants to take good care of this young lady. What care? Currently the lives of the people in the residence are stretched to make ends meet, and there is still a freeloader. It is better to send her away as soon as possible. When the words were said, the surroundings were silent. Now the Shun residence looked good on the surface, but the people inside were well aware that ever since Shen Xion's branch was split out, the money was much tighter, and even the monthly salary of the servants had reduced by a lot. As such, even if it was a great noble, the servants would not be happy if she came over to freeload. One do not know why third foreign is so harsh to us on normal days, but this time she is so generous to that young lady. Someone said in puzzlement. In Qiu Shui Yuan, Ren Wanyun was sitting in the room at the moment and pushed the teacup in front of her to the female opposite her and smiled. Newly produced tea leaves Cui Jian. Young lady Qing, have a taste. The female sitting opposite her was wearing an emerald green embroidered long dress. There wasn't any fine embroidery on the long dress. This kind of dress was very simple, and the color was very picky. If one didn't wear it well, they would look like a country girl. However, when worn by the woman in front of him, it was very comfortable and pleasing to the eye. This woman looked to be in her early 20s. Her clothes and hair accessories were also very simple. She looked very graceful and gentle. Most importantly, she had a strong scholarly air about her. With one look, one could tell that she was a girl raised in a scholarly family. Just by looking at her, one could tell that she was well educated. Chun Roqiu had always disdained that martial artists liked to be genteel, and it was the same for humans. Seeing this female in front of her, she had a feeling of mutual appreciation and was more polite. When this female saw Chun Roqiu's enthusiasm, she did not delay and picked up the teacup to take a sip before saying with a smile, "The tea is very light but mellow. The tea leaves are scattered but the smell is thick. Foreign's tea making is also outstanding. Miss Zaiqing also understands the way of tea." Chun Roqiu's smile deepened. "The way of tea is the best, but nowadays there are very few young ladies like you who understand the way of tea. The cool breeze from my 2 armpits makes me want to go to Peng Lai." The woman smiled. "Madam is right, tea ceremony is the best. But foreign should not make fun of me. I am currently 26. How can I be considered as a young lady?" 26? Chun Roqiu exclaimed, looking at young lady Zaiqing's appearance. "I thought that she was 18 or 19. But it is also good. Even though one has the appearance of 18 or 19, one has the bearing of a 20-something-year-old. It is really rare to see such magnanimity and calmness." The green-clad female in front of her was the one who came over to borrow the autumn wind yesterday. Her name was Chang Zaiqing. Her father, Chang Hu, was once old General Shen's subordinate, and at that time he blocked a knife for old General Shen on the battlefield, injuring his body, and from then on he could no longer go to the battlefield. Chang Hu's entire family was supported by Chang Hu alone, and old General Shen felt guilty in his heart. Thus he had been secretly taking out money for relief. At that time Chang Zaiqing was still young, but Shen Xian was already at the age of getting married. Old General Shen even joked that he wanted Chang Ziqing to be his daughter-in-law. It was just that before seeing Shen Xian marry, Old General Shen passed away. Because no one knew that Old General Shen was secretly helping Chang Hu's family. After that, the Chang family and the Shen family no longer had any contact. Chapter 489. One did not think that the Chang family would come knocking at this time. A flash of worry appeared in Chang Ziqing's eyes. This time one's heart is very apologetic to suddenly disturb, to give the Shen family such trouble. She looked at Chan Roqiu. Ziqing knows that the request is sudden and if Foreign feels inconvenient, Ziqing will leave now. Even though it was so, the moment she lowered her eyes, she could not help but bite her lips. Chan Roqiu affectionately pulled her hands. What is young lady Ziqing saying? Since your father saved my father-in-law's life, your Chang family is our Shen family's benefactor. Moreover, Old General and the Chang family's friendship was that of brothers who had gone through life and death together. We are all one family. Since we are all one family, seeing that you have difficulties, we cannot just stand by and watch. She patted Chang Ziqing's hands. Young lady Ziqing only care about staying in our Shen family. Tomorrow I will bring you to see old Tai Tai, but old Tai Tai's body is not well and her temper is not good. One fear that you have to be more considerate. Chang Ziqing repeatedly said that she did not dare. Her attitude was natural and polite, not bashful but not overly familiar, making it easy for others to have a good impression of her. Even Chan Roqiu, who was a cautious and vigilant person, would smile and talk to Chang Ziqing. Chang Ziqing's family lived in the Lu province. The reason why she suddenly came to the Shen residence was indeed because she had met with trouble. Chang Hu had passed away a few years ago, and the Chang family only had Chang Ziqing and her mother. Chang Foreign was bedridden all year round and finally succumbed to a serious illness a few days ago. After Chang Foreign was buried, there was a son of an official in the Lu province who wanted to snatch Chang Ziqing back to the residence as a concubine. Chang Ziqing was forced into a corner and almost hung herself with a white silk but was saved by her own wet nurse. The wet nurse then told Chang Ziqing that perhaps Chang Hu's old friend, Old General Shen, could save her once. Chang Ziqing had seen Old General Shen when she was young and vaguely remembered that he was a very forthright and magnanimous soldier. She really could not think of any other way out, thus she gathered enough money to travel to the Ding capital. She just came to the Shen residence and coincidentally met Chan Roqiu. After Chan Roqiu inquired about the cause and effect, she settled Chan Roqiu down. Chan Roqiu smiled as she looked at Chang Ziqing. Young lady Ziqing is from a water town like the Lu province and the Ding capital is not comparable to the Lu province. One do not know if the food is to one's liking. Are you used to living in the West Courtyard? Foreign is too polite. Chang Ziqing replied with a smile. Foreign's care is very thorough. The West Courtyard was also very considerate. But she was a little puzzled. The West Courtyard is so big, is it usually empty? After saying that, he felt that he was being a little rude. He smiled and said, "It is a little rude to ask like this. I hope madam will not blame me. I treat you as one of my own. What's there to blame?" Chan Roqiu smiled. "One will not hide it from you. You know that in our residence there are actually 3 households. One think that you have heard of the formidable great general. It is the first household of our Shan family. It was just that 2 years ago there was some misunderstanding in the residence and the first household moved out. Master and I wanted to explain, but eldest brother and eldest Saw had gone to the Shaochun city and had just returned recently. We want to explain, but this misunderstanding is too deep." As Chan Roqiu spoke, there was a helpless look on her face. She shook her head and said, "I don't know what to do." Chang Ziqing was startled. According to Foreign's words, that Western Courtyard was originally the place where eldest brother's family stayed. Chan Roqiu said. Chang Ziqing was suddenly enlightened. Seeing Chan Roqiu's somewhat sad look, she advised, Foreign need not take it to heart. In this world, blood is thicker than water. Since it is a misunderstanding, it will eventually be solved, not to mention that it is a family. After a long time, even if Foreign did not say it, one think that great General Shen would also feel that these matters are not worth worrying about. Chapter 490. Chen Roqiu smiled and said, I know all these principles, but after hearing young Lady Qing's words, one's heart is much more relieved. She looked at Song Ziqing. It would be good if everyone in the Shen residence were as penetrating as you. You are so knowledgeable. In the future, if there is nothing, one must consult you. This child is usually held in the palm of our hands and one fear that she is spoiled. It is good to have such an intelligent person like you to teach. Foreign's words are too serious. Song Ziqing followed up with a smile. Yuer is well educated and intelligent. I have not seen such an intelligent young lady in the Lu province. One think that she is one of the best in the Ding capital. A female should be like this, erudite and multi-talented. Thus one would have a different look. This compliment that did not reveal any traces made Chen Roqiu's heart feel extremely comfortable. She chatted more and more warmly with Song Ziqing, and only allowed Song Ziqing to return when it was almost noon. After Song Ziqing left, Shi Qing carefully asked while wiping the table, Does Foreign really want to keep that young lady Qing? She hesitated for a moment before reminding, now that the residence's expenditure is getting bigger, one fear that old Tai Tai would not be happy if she knew. Old Shen Foreign was becoming more and more stingy, and if she knew that Song Ziqing came to the Shun residence and the Shun residence had to spend money to raise an idle person, naturally her heart would be extremely dissatisfied. So Chen Roqiu previously told Song Ziqing that old Shen Foreign's temper was not good recently and hoped that she would be more tolerant. What does that short-sighted old woman know? Chen Roqiu's face was filled with disdain, unable to accomplish anything and more than spoil things. How would she be able to see the future? Could it be that Foreign feels that this young lady Qing still has some use? Hua Yi's mind was active and knew his Foreign's temperament well. If it was 2 years ago, Chen Roqiu would also be willing to play the role of a kind and charitable fairy to gain a good reputation. But now that there was no money and she could not even take care of herself, it was somewhat strange to go and help others. Speech and mannerisms are not as short-sighted as an ordinary female. Good looks and a gentle face. It is rare that her temperament is also gentle. With this kind of intelligence, even if placed in the residence, she would be one of the top characters. It is fine if she does not have the ambition, but once she has the ambition, within 5 years, this woman will definitely achieve something. Chen Roqiu smiled. The place that she was born in was filled with scheming by females every day. Chen Roqiu's mother was one of the most powerful, and Chen Roqiu saw her mother's shadow in Chang Zhaoqing. Even now that Chang Zhaoqing was still so young, one feared that her future achievements would be even more outstanding. But what can such a powerful person do? Hua Yi was puzzled. Could it be that Madame wants to form a good relationship? When Miss Qing achieves meteoric success one day and climbs up to a higher branch, then report to Madame. Chen Roqiu smiled when she heard it. Such an intelligent person with a lively mind. I have observed his speech. He looks docile on the surface, but in fact he is proud and arrogant. How would he be willing to submit to others? If you really climb up the tree, don't expect anything in return. She looks down on others. Then Madame, I cannot bear to give such an outstanding person to others. Chen Roqiu looked out of the window. One should not let one's fertile water flow into one's field. A good knife should be used on the blade's edge. But even I feel that I would not be able to fight against such a powerful female. One do not know that person. How many rounds can he last? At the other end, Chang Zhaoqing had returned to the western courtyard. The western courtyard that Shen Xian's family used to live in was now a lot more empty. Originally there were a number of servants in the western courtyard, but because Shen Xian called his personal guards over to train the soldiers, it was always very lively. Afterwards, after Shen Xian's family moved away, the servants in the western courtyard were all dismissed by Chen Roqiu to reduce expenses. Without the soldiers practicing martial arts every day, the huge west courtyard became more and more empty and deserted. Chapter 491. Chang Ziqing's wet nurse, Zhao Mama, saw that Chang Ziqing had returned and quickly came up to help Chang Ziqing take off the cloak and said worriedly, Young lady, how was the discussion with Third Shen Foreign today? It was Zhao Mama's idea to let Chang Ziqing enter the capital to seek help from the Shen family. As if she did not think of a way, then Chang Ziqing really had no other way to go. But the Shen family and the Chang family had not been in contact for so many years and people's hearts were fickle. Originally old General Shun was willing to take care of the Chong family, but now that old General Shun was not around, who knew how the Shun family would treat Chong Ziqing? Chong Ziqing rubbed her forehead and sat down on the soft couch in the room. Third Shun foreign is very enthusiastic and agreed for us to stay for a while. Even if those people came to the Ding capital, one think that they would not dare to provoke the Shun family. Granny Zhao patted her chest and breathed a sigh of relief. She said, Ba. It turns out that Master said that everyone in the Shun family has the heart of a Buddha. I was worried about young miss and was afraid that the Shun family would not help. Now it seems that I can rest assured. Mama is thinking too much. Chong Ziqing sneered and her face revealed a look of disdain. When is there a free lunch in this world? Even when old General Shun took care of the Chong family, it was also because his father had blocked a knife for him that year. In this world, there would not be people who would treat others well for no reason. Third Shun foreign is this enthusiastic because she sees that I am somewhat useful. Zhao Mama was surprised and looked at Song Ziqing. Young lady's meaning is that Third Shun foreign is not a good person? What should we do? Don't worry, Nanny. Song Ziqing comforted her, but there was a chill in her eyes. Third Shun foreign has a request of me, but how would I not have a need of her? Although I don't know what she's planning, but she'll find a way. But Granny Zhao still felt uneasy. Do not worry, Momo. Song Ziqing smiled. No matter how difficult the matter was, we have come through and come to this day. Seeing that there is a way to survive, what is there for me to be afraid of? Since the Shun family was a springboard, he naturally had to make good use of it. Third Shun foreign wants to use me, but I also use her. Zhao Mama looked at Song Ziqing and finally nodded her head. This old servant only think of young lady's good. Whatever young lady says will be what it is. The Ding capital was the capital of Mingqi, thus every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, and the most expensive place in the Ding capital, other than the palace, was Yanqing Lane. Yanqing Alley was located in the south of the city. Not far from it were the most prosperous restaurants and shops. Facing the river, the scenery was exceptional. The reason why the land in Yanqing Lane was so expensive, other than being the residence of the nobles of the previous dynasty, was because there was once a famous immortal Taoist who looked at the feng shui here. He said that this place was extremely expensive and had the dragon qi. Other than the nobles, no one could suppress the dragon qi here, and only the venerable of the world could stay here. The imperial family of Mingqi was not in the southern part of the city, thus they could not carry out a large-scale reconstruction of the palace as the commoners would complain and the treasury would not be able to take out so much money. But who would dare to live in a place with dragon qi? Would the emperor find it disrespectful if he stayed here? Even those who had the guts could not come up with such a large amount of silver. Yanqing Alley had been empty for many years because of this. But at this moment someone finally moved into Yanqing Lane. It was not someone else but the guests from Qing country and Great Liang. The Qing country's crown prince came and the Great Liang's prince of first rank came. They were all legitimate nobles. Money was not a problem. Speaking of which, there was no place more suitable for them to stay in than Yanqing Lane. They could not stay in the palace, as if that was the case. One feared that Emperor Wenhui would not be able to sleep peacefully. One's own palace was occupied by people from other countries, so how could one allow others to sleep soundly on the side couch? It would not be pleasant. At this moment in the innermost residence of Yanqing Lane, there were soldiers guarding it. Even though it was a residence, it was more like a smaller palace. The decorations were luxurious and the area was huge. Even those high-ranking officials' residences would need a few of them to be able to form such a residence. Chapter 492. This residence was the place where Prince Rui lived. There were several residences in Yanqing Lane, and the crown prince of the Qing country chose the residence that was closest to the outside, while the innermost one was chosen by Prince Rui. One did not know if it was because he wanted to deliberately keep a distance from the Qing country. No matter what, this residence was the most expensive one in the Yanqing Lane and was twice as expensive as the crown prince's residence. That Prince Rui did not even blink his eyes as he settled down, which made others think that the rumor that the Great Liang's treasury was filled with gold was not a lie. Prince Rui of the Great Liang was also very arrogant. On the first day he stayed here, he let people take down the signboard at the entrance and replaced it with a golden signboard that said, residence of Prince Rue. This made one feel angry and funny at the same time. This Prince Rue of the Great Liang ran to Mingqi to buy a residence and even put up such a signboard. Could it be that he really wanted to stay here? At this moment in a courtyard of Prince Rue's residence, a snow-white thing was flopping around on the ground. This thing is born light, but it is too fierce. It is so small and it is already so fierce. Why would master think of keeping it? A yellow-clad female was squatting on the ground and holding a wooden stick to tease the snow-white furball in front of her. Upon closer inspection, one saw that the thing was furry like a doll. Upon closer inspection, it had a pair of clear eyes that were rolling around and had a somewhat clever appearance. At this moment it was using its claws to scratch the female's hand and even changed its teeth to bite. This thing was none other than a young tiger cub. It was probably born not too long ago and was very tender. Its fur was a rare light color, and the patterns on its fur were not very clear. From afar it looked like a snow-white white tiger. It was indeed lovable. That female teased it and suddenly made a hissing sound as she threw the wooden stick in her hand and said angrily, "This fellow looks so docile, but it is actually a master that bites. It is really painful to bite it. See if I do not tear you up later." "Forget it." Another female voice sounded. It was a slightly charming woman in a light red dress. She looked at the ball on the ground and said, "This was personally brought back by Master. Nightingale, I'm afraid that before you can touch it, Master will tear it apart." The woman called Nightingale stood up, and the white tiger cub happily grabbed the corner of her skirt. It turned its head and gave her a big bite. It kept dragging her back, but was kicked away by Nightingale. She walked to the red-dressed female's side. "Hualong, is Master crazy? Why raise a tiger out of nowhere? This tiger looks pretty and cute, but it's so cruel. What if it hurts someone in the future?" Hualong shrugged her shoulders. "It's probably because his temper suddenly came. This white tiger has been eating and sleeping ever since it was brought back. It's only been a few days since it opened its eyes and it already knows how to bite people. In the future, if Master goes back with a tiger, I'm afraid His Majesty will have a headache when he finds out." Nightingale said with a bitter face, "Why are the two of you slacking off here?" A male's stern voice sounded. The two females looked back and saw a middle-aged man striding over. He walked to the side of the cage and picked up the bowl on top of the cage to take a look. He looked at Nightingale and Hualong with displeasure. "Let the two of you feed and only know how to slack off." "Tai," Nightingale said angrily, "we came out from the tower prison and thought that following Master would be a good job. Who knew that we are here to feed the tiger? We are the people of the MOU army and not those nannies that are breastfeeding. How can one not do anything and only know how to play with the tiger? Just do the things that Master has instructed and do not ask so much." Tai squatted down and took the bowl to feed the white tiger on the ground. The cooked meat was chopped into minced meat and mixed with some eggs. That white tiger went forward to sniff and ate happily. Tai rubbed the white tiger's head and the human and tiger had a harmonious appearance. He was a big and burly man, but to sit together with a petite tiger, such a warm scene was somewhat strange. Chapter 493. The tiger ate half a bowl and refused to eat anymore. Tai kept the bowl and turned to see Hualong and Nightingale bowing behind him. "Master." Xie Jingxing waved his hand and walked out of the room. The two people behind him were Ji Yushu and Gao Yang. When Ji Yushu saw that white tiger, his eyes stared. "What is this? Dog?" Tai's body trembled. Gao Yang said, "Are you stupid? They are clearly spores." Spores said, "Young Master Ji, young Master Gao, it's white tiger." His tone was also protesting for the white tiger. Unfortunately, the tiger cub could not understand the human language. After eating its fill, it chased its tail under the sun like a cat. "Tiger." Ji Yushu looked at Xie Jingxing. "Third older brother, are you alright? Why are you even raising a tiger now?" Ying said in a crisp voice, "Young Master Ji, this is what Master saw on the way to the Ding capital. There was a hunter who wanted to sell the tiger cub's skin at a high price and was saved by our master." Gao Yang glanced at Xie Jingxing. "When did you become so kind-hearted? It doesn't seem like something you would do." Xie Jingxing did not bother about the two of them. He was wearing a dark purple robe with gold-embroidered vines and was still incomparably gorgeous. However, no matter how gorgeous the clothes were, they could not compare to his outstanding appearance. He slowly walked to the side of the white tiger cub. When the white tiger cub saw a person suddenly appear in front of it, without saying a word, it opened its claws and pounced forward, biting him. However, he was lifted up by the back of his neck. Xie Jingxing lifted the white tiger cub into the air. The cub seemed to be very uncomfortable with such a position, and it kept flapping its legs. Xie Jingxing ignored it and looked at it thoughtfully. "Don't tell me you are going to kill this tiger now." Nightingale made a beheading gesture towards Hualong. Hualong shivered and shook her head. In the end, Xie Jingxing looked at it for a while before pushing aside the white tiger cub's legs. He smiled and said, "It's a female tiger." Everyone. "So what if it's a tigress?" Could it be that Xie Jingxing intended to bring it back to the Great Liang to be Rui Wangfei? The tiger cub howled, but because it was too young, its voice was soft. Xie Jingxing placed it on his chest and held it in his bosom. The white tiger cub lay on his chest and raised its head to howl at him non-stop. However, it seemed like it was acting coquettishly. It was actually very pitiful and cute. Xie Jingxing stretched out his finger and pulled the white tiger's whiskers to tease her. Nightingale was startled and cried out, "Master, don't! That white tiger hates people touching its whiskers the most. It will bite." Before he finished speaking, the white tiger bit Xie Jingxing's finger. Hualong and Tai Yi also jumped in shock. Ji Yushu's hands covered his mouth and had an exaggerated look of horror, while Gao Yang was rejoicing in others' misfortune. Xie Jingxing calmly stared at the white tiger. After staring for a while, the white tiger suddenly felt a little guilty. It loosened its mouth and turned its head to look elsewhere. There was a shallow bite mark on Xie Jingxing's finger, and it was rather obvious. They have the same eyes and the same temper. Even his habit of biting people is the same. Xie Jingxing looked down at the white tiger in his bosom but was not angry. Instead, he reached out to touch the white tiger's head. The white tiger seemed to be somewhat sleepy as it yawned and stretched its body but did not struggle. It allowed Xie Jingxing to ravage its head, and did not do anything as it laid on Xie Jingxing's chest to rest. The sun lazily shone down its golden rays. The purple-clothed man was gorgeous and handsome. He lowered his eyes to look at the white tiger in his arms. His long eyelashes were slightly curled, but it could not hide his gentle and loving gaze. That white tiger's fur was extremely beautiful as it obediently lay in his bosom. One human and one tiger were as beautiful as a painting, completely different from the strange feeling when Tai Yi was feeding the white tiger. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and looked at the tiger cub that was about to fall asleep. "Still lack a name. If it is so similar, in the future I will call you Jiao Jiao." Ji Yushu clapped his hands. "What kind of damn name is this? Third older brother, you want to give this tigress such a delicate name? It is too strange." He protested. "Change the name. Tiger Tyrant, Iron Hammer or Biao older brother are all good." Gao Yang had an unbearable look as he covered his eyes with a fan. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at Ji Yushu and continued to tickle the tiger cub's chin unhurriedly. "Shut up. This is my Jiao Jiao." Chapter 494. On the second day, Xun Miao received an invitation. This invitation was not from others, but from the Qing country's Princess Ming'an, inviting her to the residence in Yanqing Lane for a gathering. This invitation was sent over by the servants in the gatehouse, and was handed over to Shan Miao by Guyu. Initially she thought that it was sent by Feng and Ning to invite her to play, but one did not think that upon opening it, it was actually from Princess Ming'an. Jingzhe said worriedly, "This must be fake. How could it be Princess Ming'an's invitation?" Without rhyme or reason, Princess Ming'an and young lady do not have any friendship. Could it be that someone is impersonating? Guyu shook her head. "There is the princess's seal on it, so it is not fake." She looked at Shan Miao and said, "Previously this Princess Ming'an was disgraced because of young lady at the tribute banquet, and one fear that she is looking for an opportunity to take revenge. It is better for young lady to reject, as it would be bad if that Princess Ming'an has any bad ideas." Jingzhe also nodded her head repeatedly. Right. It is better to inform Master and Furen about this matter, and let Master and Furen decide." Shen Miao thought for a moment before shaking her head. Do not tell others about this matter. With father and mother's temperament, they would definitely use unyielding means. Now that the relationship between the Qin country and Mingqi is sensitive, it would be alright if it was only a fight between me and Princess Ming'an. But if it involves father and mother, one fear that it would involve the court's affairs, and it would not be good to outsmart oneself. Not telling Master and Furen. Jingzhe asked, could it be that young lady wants to receive this invitation? Jingzhe's heart was naturally not willing to be together with a princess with ill intentions, and this was not her own territory. If Shen Miao were to suffer, then she would not be able to save her in time. No harm. Shen Miao said, since Princess Ming'an had sent me an invitation and the invitation is in my hands, inviting me to her residence, if something really happened to me, Princess Ming'an would not be able to get away with it. If the Crown Prince of Qin knew about it, he would also stop it. She wouldn't dare to do anything to me. Just a little trick. I'm not afraid. But Guyu was still very worried. No buts, just do it. The date of the invitation is 2 days later and I will make a trip there. It is fine as long as outsiders do not know about it. After pausing, she said again, I will let Mo Qing follow along. The invitation is in the residence, and if something really happens, let Bai Lu and Shuangjiang take the invitation to my eldest brother. Jingzhe and Guyu were extremely unwilling in their hearts, but they could only helplessly agree to Shen Miao's words. Coincidentally, in the outermost residence of the Yanqing Lane, where the imperial family of the Qin country were temporarily staying, Princess Ming'an received a reply from the servant. She opened it and looked at it carefully. Suddenly she became angry. She threw the invitation on the table and coldly said, You have some guts. What are you angry about? A male pushed the door and entered, and when he saw Princess Ming'an's appearance, he frowned and asked. When Princess Ming'an saw the person approaching, she stood up and walked over, and handed the invitation on the table to the other and said in a spoiled manner, Crown Prince older brother, look at that Shen Miao. I sent her an invitation and she actually replied and agreed to keep the appointment. She's really not afraid of death. You sent her an invitation. If she didn't accept it, she would be too daring. You won't be happy if I accept it. Don't be so unreasonable. Huang Fu Hao, who was well aware of Princess Ming'an's temperament, did not go along with her words, but poured cold water on Princess Ming'an's head. Crown Prince older brother. Princess Ming'an stomped her feet. Is she helping me or helping her? That day at the tribute banquet, she made me make a fool of myself and deliberately made me bite an apple. It was clearly to deliberately embarrass me and let our Qin country lose face. Now you not only do not help the Qin country to regain face, but also blame me. What kind of logic is this? Even if one were to return to the Qin country to see imperial father, it would not be reasonable. Chapter 495. Huang Fu Hao coldly glanced at Princess Ming'an, and when he thought of the matter at the tribute banquet, his face suddenly sunk. Even though Princess Ming'an's words were not entirely true, after all it was Princess Ming'an's initiative to compete with Shen Miao in archery. But when Shen Miao let Princess Ming'an bite the apple to compete, it was somewhat overbearing. Even in the last few sentences there was a hint of mockery. He was not sure if Shen Miao did it on purpose, but if this matter were to spread back to the Qin state, the Qin emperor would definitely blame him. He did not know why, but Huang Fu Hao felt that Shen Miao was very special. That Princess Ming'an's bow was something that other people would need to familiarize themselves with for a few days before they could use it, but she was so proficient that it was as if she had pulled it thousands of times. Occasionally, when he glanced over, his gaze seemed to carry a hint of hostility. Now was not the time for the Mingqi and the Qin country to be enemies, so why would Shen Miao have hostility towards him and Princess Ming'an? Before this they did not know each other, and it was only because of Princess Ming'an's difficulties that Shen Miao's vengeance was too heavy. Seeing that Huang Fu Hao did not speak and was thinking about something, Princess Ming'an's eyes suddenly widened in surprise. Crown Prince older brother, could it be that you are bewitched by her? What is so good about that little slut? Do not forget that before this the entire world knew that she was obsessed with Prince Ding of Mingqi, and was a complete idiot. She did it so calmly because someone was guiding her from behind. Don't be bewitched by her. Huang Fu how impatiently waved his hand. What are you talking about? As for you this time in the Qing country, do not forget the things that Imperial Father had instructed you to do. I do not care what you want to do to Shan Miao, but you cannot make a move in this residence. You can do whatever you want in other places as long as you do not pull anything over. One Shan Miao was not a big deal, but now the Emperor of Mingqi needed to rely on Shen Exine. If Shen Miao was to be touched, Shen Exine would definitely fall out, and the alliance with Mingqi would be destroyed. You'd better look at the bigger picture. Princess Ming'an was showered with such a warning, but her face eased up. It was just that when she looked at it seriously, the anger in her eyes became more intense. She smiled. Don't worry, brother Crown Prince. I will not find trouble for us. I invited her over just to see what kind of person Shen Miao is. If they really want to fight, they will not use the name of our Qin state. Did you forget that when we were kids our favorite thing to do was watch dogs bite each other? There are so many dogs in Mingqi. It is not difficult to find one to work for us. Huang Fu how also smiled. As long as you know your limits. The sky gradually darkened. In the Shun residence of the Ding capital in the original western courtyard, there was a small lamp lit and Chan Roqiu and Chang Zhaoqing were talking. Chan Roqiu smiled. This handkerchief is embroidered with poems and it is really nice to look at. Even the ants of the scholar's mansion couldn't compare to Miss Qing's poetry. Originally I didn't know what ingenious was, but now that I see Miss Qing, I completely understand. Song Zaiqing pursed her lips and smiled. Foreign overpraises. It's just that Zaiqing can't help much here. And I've been living and eating for free all day, so I feel bad about it, so I can only embroider some handkerchiefs. It's not worth much money, so I hope Foreign doesn't mind. I do not dislike it. Chan Roqiu looked at the handkerchief and carefully folded it up and kept it in her sleeves before saying with a smile, I have to hide such a good thing. Otherwise if Yuer saw it, she would have to take it away from me. Whatever she sees from me, she would always pester me to take it over. This handkerchief is so exquisite that I cannot bear to give it to her. Song Zaiqing smiled. It is good that Foreign does not mind. If second young lady likes it, I will embroider another one for her. Then the relationship is good. Chan Roqiu also smiled. This way one would not fear that Yuer would take away one's heart. She smiled as she looked at Song Zaiqing and asked, speaking of which, about the words that I said to Miss Qing previously, how about Miss Qing consider it? Chapter 496. Previously when Chan Roqiu was chatting with Chang Zhaoqing, she mentioned about Shen Xian's matter. Now Song Zaiqing had seen everyone else in the Shun residence, other than the first household's family that moved out. Chan Roqiu suggested that since it was the daughter of old General Shan's old subordinate and Chang who was old General Shan's benefactor, naturally Shen Xian would not reject Chang Zaiqing. Moreover Shen Xian was old General Shan's eldest son, so it was reasonable for Song Zaiqing to pay a visit. Hearing that, Song Zaiqing hesitated for a moment before shaking her head with a smile. It is already very apologetic for me to come over and disturb Foreign. How would one dare to disturb General Shun? Moreover Zaiqing's trip to the Ding capital this time was just to avoid that official's son, and once the matter was over, Zaiqing would leave. It is not good to let General Shen know about this matter. I say that everything about young Lady Qing is good, just that she is too polite. Chan Roqiu pretended to be angry. The relationship between the Chang family and the Shun family is so good that you are one family with us. I heard that when Miss Qing was young, Big Brother had seen you before. You are Big Brother's younger sister, so why would Big Brother feel embarrassed? If you really do not go and see eldest brother in the Ding capital, one fear that eldest brother would be angry if he knew about it. Chang Zaiqing did not speak and Chan Roqiu patted her hands. Moreover, since you want to hide from that family in the Lu province, it is more convenient for eldest brother. There were many soldiers in their residence and the guards were tight. Even if that family in the Lu province chased all the way to the Ding capital, they would not dare to act rashly because of eldest brother. Since I treat you as one of my own, I will tell you clearly that Big Brother's place is the place that can truly protect you. Mentioning that family in the Lu province, Chang Zaiqing's expression changed and her face started to show some uncertain expression. Chan Roqiu said, Young Lady Qing, just treat it as going to your eldest brother's residence as a guest for a period of time. What is there to worry about? Third foreign do not know. Song Ziqing forced a smile. After all, too much time has passed and it is unknown if General Shen still remembers Ziqing. Moreover, there is still Shen foreign, fifth young miss and eldest young master. I'm afraid that it would be too much of a disturbance if someone were to move in without any reason. Don't worry about that. Chun Rocho smiled when she heard it. That eldest saw of mine has the best character. Because she is a heroine from a military family, she is straightforward and honest. She does not have any ulterior motives and is a kind person. After knowing about your matter, she could not help but sympathize. Besides, eldest brother doesn't have any other women at home. It's hard for eldest sister to find someone to talk to. If she sees you, I'm sure she'll treat you very well. As for eldest brother and fifth sister, they are both sensible children. It's even more impossible for them to have any disputes with you. Chun Rocho saw Chong Ziqing's wavering expression and smiled. How about this? If young lady Qing feels that it is not bad, I will get someone to help young lady Qing write an invitation and send it over. It will not mention our Shun residence and use young lady Qing's name so that it would not cause any misunderstanding. Young lady Qing, why don't you pay a visit to Big Brother first and see what his attitude is? If you think it's inappropriate, you can just turn back and not go. Chong Ziqing thought for a long time and finally nodded her head with determination and smiled gratefully at Chun Rocho. Third foreign, consider everything thoroughly. Ziqing thanks third foreign. See that you are getting more and more polite. Chun Rocho smiled as she stood up. It is already late, so I will not disturb your rest. Tomorrow I will write an invitation and get someone to send it over. Young lady Qing need not care about anything. With such a clear and intelligent person like you, no one would not like you. One fear that when eldest brother finds you, he would be happy to have another younger sister like you. Chong Ziqing smiled and said that she did not dare. After sending off Chun Rocho, Zhao Mama came over to clean the table. Just now Chun Rocho and Chong Ziqing's conversation was heard by Zhao Mama. Zhao Mama asked, young lady, that third Shen foreign is fine. Why would she mention the matter of General Shen? Could it be that she wants to chase young lady out of the residence? Chapter 497. Song Ziqing sneered. Originally I did not understand what third Shen foreign wanted me to do. But now I understand. Third Shen foreign's calculations are very good, to want to use me to deal with others. Zhao Mama was shocked. Young lady. What does third Shen foreign want young lady to do? Song Ziqing sat down in front of the table, and her expression changed unpredictably. She was not a fool, and it was not that she could not hear the hint in Chun Rocho's words. She said that only Shen Xian could protect her safety, and if she could enter the Shen residence for a lifetime, then she need not worry about those people from the Lu province coming to the door. One said that Luo Shuiyan came from a military family, and her personality was straightforward, without any schemes. It was that Luo Shuiyan was stupid and easy to deal with. As for the lack of women in Shen Xian's inner courtyard, the hint was even more obvious. If Song Ziqing could enter, other than dealing with Luo Shuiyan who was not that smart, there was no other worries. She said, since third Shen foreign regards me so highly, I should first go and take a look at what is going on. Young lady is going to General Shen residence? Zhao Mama was surprised for a moment. Knowing that third Shen foreign has a bad idea, young lady still want to go? It is not a bad idea if used well. Song Ziqing waved her hands. Living in the Shen residence is not a long-term plan. I have to plan for my own future. There is no harm. I am only going to take a look, and if there is anything wrong, naturally I will not jump in. If Zhao Mama looked at her carefully. If one feels that it is not bad. Song Ziqing smiled faintly. Third Shen foreign can be considered to have met my intentions. The night spread into the Ding capital and every household lit up their lights, making the scene of the brightly lit and prosperous. However, other than the palace, the most prosperous section of the road was still the southern part of the city. The restaurants were filled with singing and dancing, the sounds of drinking, the sounds of females and males laughing, and the sounds of bamboo and Chinese harp intertwined together, making it exceptionally moving. In the residence of Prince Rui, the lights were done extremely well. Even the lanterns were embroidered with gold thread, and once it was lit in the night, it would be eye-catching. Some passers-by drooled, wanting to steal one and remove the golden thread to return the money. However, when they saw the stern and ferocious-looking guards at the door, they could only suppress the guts in their hearts and leave with their tails between their legs. That was something from the residence of Prince Rui of the Great Liang. Who dared to steal it? It was quiet in the mansion, as if there was no one there. At the end of the path there was a huge courtyard. In the courtyard there was a beautifully renovated pavilion. The pavilion was adjacent to a clear pond. The water of the pond was emerald green, and the moonlight was alluring. If it was summer, this place would have the unique charm of the wind lotus in the courtyard. Unfortunately, the weather was gradually approaching the beginning of winter. Sitting in the pavilion, one would feel a rustling chill. At this moment there was a person sitting in the pavilion. The wide flowing gold and purple color almost covered the long bench in the pavilion. It was a very handsome young man. Under the gentle moonlight, his usual valiance gradually became gentler, and his gorgeous facial features became gentler. He lowered his head and played with the tiger cub in his arms. The tiger cub was forcefully pressed on his chest and turned its head in discomfort, trying to turn its body to bite the hand that was scratching its head. Unfortunately, one did not know if it was because its neck was too short or the action of the person who was pressing it was too hard. It failed several times. But this tiger cub was not discouraged and continued to bite on the purple-clad youth's sleeves without getting tired. Xie Jingxing pulled out his sleeves from the tiger cub's mouth and stared at the area that was mostly wet with the tiger cub's saliva. After looking for a long time, he flicked the tiger cub's head. The tiger cub gave an "awoo" sound and finally successfully turned its body, and used its claws to play with Xie Jingxing's finger. Chapter 498. In the distant bushes, two heads popped out. Nightingale stared foolishly at the human and tiger in the pavilion, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. One knew that Xie Jingxing had a serious obsession with cleanliness, and normally he did not like animals, and even people close to him would not dare to touch his things. Now that his sleeves were covered with saliva, he was actually this calm. She said, "Has Master recently gone crazy? Why is he hugging a tiger all day, even when eating and sleeping? I heard that he hugged it even when bathing today. Could it be that he really wants to bring this tiger back to the Great Liang to be Rui Wangfei?" Seeing that the person beside her did not move, Nightingale turned her head. "Hualong, you also say a few words." Hualong held her face with both hands and looked at the people in the pavilion. "Master is really good to that tiger cub. You see how gentle his eyes are when he looks at the tiger. Master is so peerless in his generation. If it was me, I would rather turn into a tiger so that I can sleep and bathe with Master." When Hualong talked about these things, she was calm and did not have any shyness. At the end she sighed and shook her head. "Unfortunately, humans are not as good as tigers. I see that you are possessed." Nightingale despised her. In the pavilion, Xie Jingxing rubbed the tiger cub's head until it was almost pressed against his chest. The tiger cub struggled with all its might, and when it was struggling, it accidentally pounced onto Xie Jingxing's neck and took the opportunity to lick Xie Jingxing's face. "You even secretly kissed me." Xie Jingxing chuckled and lifted the tiger cub up by its neck. He looked at the tiger cub struggling in the air with evil interest and raised his eyebrows. "Humans and tigers are the same." The tiger cub bared its fangs and brandished its claws at him. Xie Jingxing kissed its head. "Be good." In the bushes, Nightingale leaned forward. "Master has gone crazy. I want to go and kill that tiger," Hualong said with a murderous look. Just at this moment, Taiyi's figure suddenly appeared in the pavilion. Xie Jingxing placed the tiger cub back into his embrace and asked, "What is the matter?" Replying to Master, "Today Princess Ming'an sent an invitation to 5th Shen young lady." "Oh." Xie Jingxing's fingers that were scratching the tiger cub slightly paused. "Princess Ming'an invites 5th Shen young lady to the residence for a chat." 5th Shen young lady accepted the invitation, and it will be 2 days later. Taiyi bowed and replied, "Got it." Xie Jingxing waved his hand. Taiyi glanced at the tiger cub in Xie Jingxing's arms and the corner of his mouth twitched. He turned around and retreated into the night. "You're quite daring." Xie Jingxing placed his finger in the tiger cub's mouth. The tiger cub had been eating, bathing, and sleeping with Xie Jingxing. so it seemed to have developed some familiarity with Xie Jingxing. It held his finger in its mouth but didn't really bite it. It was just playing with it. Are you going? Xie Jingxing asked. The white tiger cub howled and looked at him with sparkling eyes. Think. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. I will listen to you. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. This morning, Xun Miao also woke up early in Jingzhe, and Guyu helped her to find clothes to wear. The weather was gradually entering the beginning of winter, and Mingqi's winter always came especially early, and it was especially cold. In the past few days, it rained continuously and Xun Miao's heavier clothes were damp and could not be found. Guyu took out a cloak from the bottom of the box and said, "This one is rather dry. Even though it is somewhat thick, it is very cold today, so it would not be awkward for young lady to wear it." Xun Miao looked at the cloak in Guyu's hands. It was a snow-white cloak and it was made from fox skin from top to bottom. It was the rare white fox skin and there was not a single strand of mixed-colored fur on it. Even after a few years it was still as clean as new, and it was obviously a good piece of leather. This cloak was the one that Xun Miao left the Ding capital with Shen Xian 2 years ago, and stayed in a farmer's house. On the second day, there was an inexplicable additional cloak in the house. The farmer's house did not have this cloak and Xun Miao did not know where did this thing come from. Previously she was thinking of when to exchange it for money, but Shan Qiu strongly forbade it, saying that this white fox fur was hard to obtain and it was better to keep it for herself. Chapter 499. Even though it was kept, that cloak really did not fit. It was too big for Shan Miao to wear, so it was kept under the chest and was never taken out to wear. If it was not for Guyu digging it out from the chest today, Shan Miao almost forgot about it. She looked at the cloak and thought of something. Previously, when Xie Jingxing flipped through her bedroom at night, he mentioned that he had met her at a farmer's house 2 years ago, but she did not remember as she was drunk that day. Now thinking about it, this cloak should be left behind by Xie Jingxing. She could not remember anything about that night's matter, and only knew that Xie Jingxing was talking nonsense, and her face turned a little red. Jingzhe and Guyu saw Shan Miao's somewhat uncomfortable look and looked at each other, not knowing what happened to Shan Miao. Jingzhe reminded, "Young lady?" Shan Miao recovered to her senses and looked at the cloak in Guyu's hands before saying in a bad mood, "Find an opportunity to pawn it at the pawn shop." But eldest young master said that the skin is very good and does not let young lady pawn it. Guyu felt strange. No matter how good the skin is, one do not want it. Shan Miao said, "Send it to the Fengxian pawn shop when you are done packing it." The Fengxian pawn shop collects treasures all the time, so manager Ji would definitely like this thing. Seeing Shan Miao's appearance, Guyu and Jingzhe dared not say anything more and shrugged their shoulders before continuing to look for other cloaks for Shan Miao. Finally he picked a lilac-colored brocade cloak with rabbit fur, and after helping Shan Miao to freshen up, he found an excuse to go out. Luotan was easy to send away as Shen Xian, and the rest would usually return in the evening from the Ministry of War, and without the eyes and ears of the Shen family, there was much more freedom now. Emoqing once again acted as the carriage driver. Emoqing was now Shan Qiu's people, but he would always help Shen Miao to handle matters. Most of the time, Shen Miao would not let Emoqing tell others about her matters. Emoqing looked more like Shen Miao's confidant. But Emoqing was already used to his identity, and every time Shan Miao went out to handle matters, Emoqing was already used to it. But today when Emoqing knew the place that Shen Miao was going to, he was also shocked. It was actually the residence of the crown prince of the Qin country. Shen Miao's actions at the tribute banquet was spread throughout the Ding capital the next day, and naturally Emoqing knew about it. That Princess Ming'an obviously came with ill intentions, and Emoqing was somewhat worried, but Shan Miao had a well-thought-out look, so Emoqing did not say anything. When they reached the residence of the Crown Prince of Qin, the guards outside saw the invitation in Shan Miao's hands and only let Shen Miao wait outside. They said that they would take the invitation to report to their master, and would not return. After a long time, Jingzhe could not bear it any longer and said, "It has been almost an hour and these people still have not reported?" It was clear that the Qin princess was deliberately making things difficult for the young lady. Even if there is a heater in the carriage, it will still be very cold outside. If Miss gets sick from the cold, what will the princess say? Guyu also said, "This is really too much." Since one took the initiative to invite, Then what is the meaning of leaving one outside the residence in the cold? Usually, when people came to send invitations, they would at least welcome them into the mansion to wait. Even if the relatives of the imperial family had many rules, they shouldn't leave people hanging for more than an hour. Moreover, in the past hour, no one had come forward to greet him. Mo Qing said, "Young lady, it is better to return." Shen Miao shook her head. "Since one is already here, then one should wait. One must give enough face and not let the courtesy fall on the other side." When she was in the Qing country, Princess Ming'an liked to treat people like this. In the cold of the 12th lunar month, she would use chatting as an excuse to let people wait in the icy cold garden early in the morning. One wait would be a few hours, and sometimes one would wait for an entire day without seeing anyone. Afterwards, a maid would be sent over to say that there were some matters that one could not come. This meant that one had waited for a day in vain. Princess Ming'an's methods were the same as always, superficial and shallow. In the past lifetime one could endure it, so what was an hour in this lifetime? In the residence of the Crown Prince of Qin, at this moment Princess Ming'an was sitting in the room, and the maid was adding silver charcoal to the brazier. Princess Ming'an picked up the tea on the table and took a sip, but her expression was somewhat carefree. She asked the servant outside, "Has that cheap person left?" Replying to Your Highness, the servant said, "Fifth Shin young lady's horse carriage is still at the residence's entrance and had not left." A trace of unhappiness flashed on Princess Ming'an's face. To actually be this patient, she originally thought that by leaving Shen Miao out to dry, the proud and arrogant young lady of an official's family would return to the residence in a fit of anger. After that, she would be able to find a reason to say that Shen Miao was disrespectful to her. But she did not expect that Shen Miao would be this calm. But she smiled. After waiting for so long, one think that one's patience is almost exhausted. It is not bad to change methods. Someone passed down Bengong's orders to invite Shen Miao in. Chapter 500. The residence that the Qin country's people lived in was probably renovated, and the layout was somewhat different from the Ming-Chi's residence. When Shen Miao entered, she was aware that this residence in Yanqing Lane was renovated by the Qin country, as it had the same style as the Qin country's palace, which was extremely luxurious. When Shen Miao entered, she was aware that this residence in Yanqing Lane was renovated by the Qin country, as it had the same style as the Qin country's palace, which was extremely luxurious. At that time when Shen Miao first went to the Qin country, she was envious when she saw that the palace was renovated so beautifully. Now thinking about it, the imperial family of the Qin country's preferences were really not flattering. As to rush to show that there was money, it was a cliché. After being led by the maid to the garden, Shen Miao finally saw Princess Ming'an. Princess Ming'an sat at a small stone table in the garden, and the stone table was covered with a silk handkerchief embroidered with butterflies. On top of it were a few plates of exquisite snacks and a pot of tea. Next to it was a small pond, and at this time of the year, the pond water had not frozen, and there were many red carps shaking their heads and tails in the pond. A few maids were sitting at the side, carrying small bowls to feed the fishes. Shen Miao stood in front of Princess Ming'an and bowed to Princess Ming'an. Princess Ming'an turned her head over. Among the three countries of Ming-Chi, the Great Liang and the Qin country, it was an unquestionable fact that the Great Liang was the most powerful, and in comparison, the Ming-Chi and the Qin country were much inferior. However, when comparing the Ming-Chi and the Qin country was slightly better than the Ming-Chi, because the Qin country's military was stronger. Perhaps it was because of the imperial family of the Ming-Chi. The Fu family wanted to take back the military power to the imperial family, and dared not let it go. Thus in these years it was hard for the Ming-Chi to produce any outstanding generals. For example, Shenxian and Xie Ding. When these two people were not as good as they were in the past, the Ming-Chi was unable to find other military families to replace their positions. Thus for this tribute banquet, Emperor Wenhui hurriedly summoned Shenxian back, so that he would not lose face in front of other countries. Perhaps the Qin country knew that they could not compare to the Great Liang, but they were above the Ming-Chi, and the Qin country's people always had a sense of superiority in front of the Ming-Chi people. This kind of feeling was very annoying. In Shen Miao's previous lifetime, when she went to the Qin country, it seemed that even a little palace made in the Qin country's palace looked down on her. The royal family of the Qin kingdom did even more unseemly. It was as if by stepping on her dignity, one would be able to step on Ming-Chi's dignity. At this moment, seeing Princess Ming-En, some memories from the previous lifetime came flooding in. Ben Gong invited you over today and initially thought that you would not dare to come. One did not think that you actually came alone, and your guts are not small. Princess Ming-En glanced at Shan Miao and her gaze suddenly became gloomy. Today she was wearing a gold-colored flower washing gauze and a gold-plated red dress, and her makeup was also the best-looking Linlang hairpin in the Qin country. But when she saw Shan Miao wearing a lilac-colored cloak and without any makeup, she paled in comparison. Princess Ming-En was actually very delicate and beautiful, and was a typical female of the Qin country's imperial family. Being pampered with gold and jade, there was a special delicacy about her. There were many types of temperament, and Shan Miao's appearance was delicate and gentle, but her temperament was eye-catching. Her dignified appearance made her not have a trace of softness, as if she was a female that had sat on a high throne for many years, and was filled with an air of nobility. The princess must be joking. Shan Miao's expression did not change. The princess is a guest of the Ming-Chi, and since Shan Miao was fortunate enough to be invited, how would one not keep the appointment? Jingzhe and Guyu stood behind Shan Miao, and Mo Qing was stopped by the guards at the door, but Shan Miao did not say anything. Shan Miao was very clear about Princess Ming-En's temperament. Since Princess Ming-En had sent an invitation today, it was impossible for her to do anything dangerous. It was nothing more than using some means to make her suffer. When Shan Miao came, she was already prepared. But the suffering was not for nothing. She would definitely exaggerate Princess Ming-En's actions today by 10 times.